All right, so we should be live now.
Yep, I see it.
Let's see if it works. All right, so we should be live now. There's that beautiful voice.
Yep, I see it.
Let's see if it works.
You say booyah, no harm, no foul.
I love listening to my own content. It's a real mood elevator. All right, so we should be live now. Torturing me. There's that beautiful voice. Is that me? Oh, it's on my side.
That's you.
Think about you. Oh my God. I thought you were intentionally torturing me.
No. That was you. I thought you were intentionally doing that.
I don't know. It just keeps opening up more of it. Let me close this. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Pokenomics stream tonight.
That's I opened it on my phone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I opened it on my phone for chat.
Yeah, it sounds much louder for me when it's on my screen, which makes sense. Yeah, so this should be a fun one. We're just gonna hang out, talk about whatever we feel like talking about, whatever you guys feel like talking about. I know I did a stream yesterday too. So we're getting double streams. It'll probably be a little while till I do another one. Part of why it's good to get two, I think, here with the holidays coming up and next Sunday doing our Zoom thing. So, yeah. Let's see. You say booyah and thrifty. Kai. How's everyone doing? They do highly blessed. Some familiar faces, some familiar names. So, I don't know. What do you feel like talking about? Or what do you want to start with tonight, Dan? Anything in your mind?
Nothing too substantial lately. It's getting over. I probably sound a little strange. Gonna be chewing on some cough drops. Getting over a little cold in my house, but I got tested and it's not the bad stuff, so we're good to go.
That's good. Yeah, I had the same thing a month ago and was concerned for a couple of days while I was waiting for the results. Yeah,
I actually it was like a drive-through pharmacy.
Yeah,
they pass you the swab, you do it yourself. 30 minutes later, I got my email negative. It was the quick one.
That's what I did too, but for some reason, yeah, it took a day or something, day and a half. Oh well. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, what were we talking about before? You're talking about
actually Briar Owen actually just asked if we watched the Rudy promo burning. So I guess we can start there.
Sure.
I did pop into it quick. A lot of people were critiquing his strategy on failing to keep the torch lit and then not really thoroughly burning them.
Yeah.
I did see somebody mention though, and I think he did say that he wants to frame it when he's done. So maybe it wasn't intentional, just singeing instead of burn to ash type thing.
It's an interesting point. It's a good point.
Somebody mentioned it in the chat, so I'm just echoing that take on it, which I think was reasonable.
Saying it. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. I don't know. It would have been cooler, I guess, to see a huge blaze, but I also didn't. I guess I didn't really care that much, if I'm being honest, one way or the other. But yeah, as always, a big fan of Rudy. I certainly watched it, and there were a lot of people watching it. And I'm interested in what he says and what he does generally. So, both of us. No, you didn't buy that promo.
No, that sold. I more likely I would have bought it if I was home, but that actually was happening when I was in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And how long did that last? Was that up for 24 or 48 hours?
It's up for, I want to say it was up for a while. Yeah, 24 or 48. I don't remember anymore. But yeah, most of them sort of sold at the beginning and then at the end. Probably 24, I want to say.
I think the duration of it was while I was in Vegas, which is, I would have had more time to stew on it if I was home, and I would have been more likely to move ahead with it. But
Yeah.
interesting thing for sure.
Yeah. Um, yeah, someone just posted it in like the Discord, and last second I would have missed it if someone hadn't posted it there. So thank you. I forget who did, but thank you for doing that. And yeah, it was entertaining. It would have been cool if he had done it live, and if it had been like a bigger blaze, but I also don't think it would have been like that much cooler. I think the whole thing sort of did its thing, and it's fun. So entertaining and fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget how many were unsold, but it was only like 50 or so, right? Somewhere around there.
I think it was like 100 didn't get sold.
Was it that? Yeah.
Something like that, but almost all of it, I think, because I think there were 1,500 and maybe 1,400 sold or something around that.
Yeah, somewhere in that vicinity. So I don't know what they're selling for on eBay currently, but in some ways, like that was tens of thousands of dollars being lit up, right? Maybe $100,000.
It was basically best case scenario for Rudy, worst case scenario for everyone who bought one. How many sold?
Yeah.
From a financial perspective, because if they had all sold out, it would have implied that there was actually more demand for them on the Patreon, and that maybe some people didn't get them, like if they had all sold out like immediately. But the fact that so many people bought two, the fact that it took the entire time, and the fact that it didn't quite sell out, and yet it almost completely sold out. So there's basically the same amount of huge supply in the world, but there just wasn't any more demand to eat them up. Yeah, I mean, it's not a card I would be buying, and this will get hate, but like I don't care. Like like for an investment, and I own one. I bought one, that is not a good outcome for someone who wants to play the game of hopefully it's going to be very expensive. What you wanted is it for all of it to sell out immediately, and or for very little of it to sell out and for people to underestimate it. And you sort of didn't get either of those two scenarios. And I think most people who want that, or a lot of the people who want that, are already a patron of Rudy. So a lot of the market had access to buy it and didn't buy one. Yeah, because it was very expensive. But we'll see how it, like, what value it goes over time. I don't really care. I bought one for myself because those types of cards just are going to be good, like memories of this time, of this crazy mania time for me. So I for me, it was just a pure collection buy. I feel the same way about the MetaZoo Rudy promos.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have both of those.
Yeah.
More people filling in.
Yeah. Take our time here. Yes, if you guys do have questions, otherwise we're just sort of hanging out. I have a bunch of cards around me. Right before this, I was going back through old binders and pulling out cards to eventually grade if PSA ever comes back again. So I was looking at my like XY era binder and pulling out a bunch of minty like full art trainers that have gone up in value a lot over the last year or so. So it's fun. It's very time consuming to go back through binders like that and pull out the cards, but it's really enjoyable and really exciting when you like find a 10. You get that feeling of like, ooh, gonna make some money on this, ooh, that's exciting. I didn't remember that I had this. And I remembered that I had those cards, but I didn't remember, like, are these 10s or these 9s? Are a lot of these going to be 8s? Because there was really bad centering on certain sets and certain cards in that era. And, particularly in Sun and Moon, I had a lot of centering issues on a lot of the boxes I opened. On a number of different full arts. So, and just like whitening and oddly cut corners and things like that. There were definitely some issues. Just because something was pulled, there definitely was no guarantee that it was going to be gem mint.
Yeah, one thing I'm really excited about doing someday, because I've had it on my list for a year or two now, but
yeah,
years ago I opened one of every box, every set. And like, as I was doing that, I graded all of the like obvious things, the gold stars, the EXs,
the inserts, Pokemon inserts.
The real chases. But recently I got back a submission where I graded a bunch of like English set cards that were pop 5 and under, Heart, Gold, Soul, Silver era, Platinum, Diamond and Pearl, Call, Legend, and I was shocked. Like, even though it's a middle kind of dead era, and even though the popularity is so much lower, to see a hollow set card have like not a PSA 10 pop of 4, a total graded pop of 4, was
Yeah.
really shocking to me. So going
Yeah.
through those binders, like I've still got from every set in those blocks, I would have opened 6 to 8 or 10 hollows probably that I've got to grade, and then some other collections I bought years ago too.
And I looked for those cards to try to buy them, and because I really wanted to build a position and grade those cards. Like the regular hollows from a lot of those sets, I just felt were very undervalued for during that period, and I felt like would have potential upside in the future. And I really was unable to find a lot of them. I do think that because they had no value, people weren't even selling them. So I think there was this weird thing of like people didn't even know I was looking for them. So people weren't even listing those. So like, for example, like Card Rush Inc., who clearly opened or had some sort of relationship with someone who opened hundreds of those boxes and graded just like the biggest hits, the level X's, the secret rares, that sort of thing. And then, or even they opened a lot of original Nintendo EX era too, and graded a lot of like the EX cards and the gold stars, and put them up for sale. I was buying those, but they weren't grading or putting up for sale the regular hollows because they literally had zero value and zero interest then. So I think I managed to buy maybe 100 PSA 9s or 10s from across that whole diamond and pearl black and white era, something like that. And I think I got almost all of them because I was really watching for them. They came up on like auction on eBay type of thing within a couple of year. I'm sure I lost auctions to people, but I bid on each auction and tried to win them. And they just didn't. So one thing I wonder is like, where's all that Card Rush Inc. stuff?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, where is all that? Because there is that supply out there for those things, but how much is there? And clearly, I think that certainly if grading wasn't so expensive, it would make sense to grade a lot of that stuff, I think, right now. And some of that stuff I think would do really well, particularly if you have like a Glaceon, Leafeon, type card. I mean, when you look at how much the level X's are selling for. And there's some really beautiful regular hollows. I mean, I think the black and white era had a really nice aesthetic on some of the regular hollows. Like I really always liked the way some of them looked. And so I was looking to pick up, there's some like Espeon and Umbreon cards from that era that I think are beautiful. So it's just an era that it was never graded. If you can actually get your hands on mint cards, I think there's a lot of upside, but I don't think anyone, I mean, I can't, so I don't.
And I don't have like stacks and stacks of them. I might have a couple copies each of most of those hollows, but it's a really weird thing where like some of the more popular species are 4-figure cards now, or at least there's 4-figure offers out there for them. But then the PSA 9 might not be $100, and there's like no sales of any of it. So even if PSA, or when PSA gets down to 50 a card, it's still hard to send those. You almost need 20 or less again to where I'll send them. And then once we get 20, that might be 2 years from now, and it might be a year turnaround again if there's another tidal wave. So it's really distant between when those pops might start to go up, unless there could be, maybe Card Rush has 10,000 of those sat in the backlog right now. I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. I think I'm watching those pop reports pretty carefully, and they really have not gone up at all yet. So well, I'm just sort of in a wait and see mode. And honestly, I just find it interesting, just putting aside, it's interesting to theorize, like, where is that population? We talked on Patreon how much we think like those sets were, I don't know if you remember the numbers offhand, you can share them, but how many booster boxes we think are printed. So how much of that stuff might be out there? Like there was a lot of it printed, I mean, much less than some other eras, but there's still Pokemon printed a lot of everything, relative to something like Flesh and Blood or MetaZoo or something. So it's like, where did that supply go?
Yeah, even a dead era, when you're talking a set card, there were tens of millions of those cards printed. I mean, there were no. I mean, we don't have exact numbers on any of them, but we know that Pokemon's printed 34.1 billion cards between 1995 and earlier this March. So like just extrapolating from what they did. They've kind of given anything like that. Nowhere near.
Am I breaking up, or are you breaking up, Dan? Do you know?
I just got an alert.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me now? I just got an alert that my connection was unstable. That was me.
No problem. I ended up hearing what you said. Did we pick any? Were there any? Because I know when you did that, you kind of got information from the Pokemon company or other sources stating certain print runs for certain years. Were there any print runs that we kind of knew for sure? And we'll put for sure in quotations, because these were, what they said they printed or what someone else said they printed, for any of those kind of years in the Diamond and Pearl Black and White era offhand.
So looking at it, there was one number that we pinned that like Pokemon must have fed the information to NASA. They had an advertising joint campaign thing with like NASA for the EX Deoxys set. And at that point, they had printed 13 billion cards in 2005. Yeah. And then unfortunately, our next data point wasn't until 2017 with Sun and Moon Base, where they had printed 23.6 billion. Okay. But given that, you can figure out how many years had passed, how many sets had been released. And then if you evenly distributed that print run across all the sets, it averaged out to where there was something like 100 million cards per set, somewhere in that range. So actually,
what would that equal for like a chase card for like a level X roughly, or something from a set like that?
So the chase cards for the level X's, we didn't have any set card chases under 5 figures. So the rarest set cards, something like, I think we determined that EX Deoxys Gold Star would have likely been in that territory. And we had it listed at about 14,000 estimated. So there were a lot of them in that range, in the 10s to like 30,000. Okay. And that seems reasonable because these things were distributed, even though Pokemon was at a low, they were distributed across the country and worldwide. And set cards. I mean, they were mass printed.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I think 10,000 to 30,000. I mean, when we try to compare this stuff, I think I want to throw Alpha's print runs or something like 1,100 for the rares, 11,000 for the commons. So it's sort of like the common Alpha cards are around the same as like the number of Gold Stars that are printed, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So just kind of arranging yourself. Now, I think when you compare the number of Gold Stars printed to the number of a rookie Michael Jordans, there's so many more of that rookie Michael Jordan printed. And that's where you see that even though there's a lot of Pokemon printed, a lot more than Alpha, Pokemon is still a lot less expensive than that Michael Jordan. Again, it's Michael Jordan, but whatever. But you can see how demand has a lot to do. It's not just supply and rarity. It's also demand and importance of any specific card. But it's interesting to kind of have an understanding of like, okay, well, this is 10 times less rare than that Alpha card, and the Michael Jordan maybe we think is 10 times less rare than, and so on and so forth, to kind of get a sense of, where you think this card could move, how much more might be out there. Obviously, an older card like that, a card that didn't have a lot of value when it came out, is going to have a higher degree of attrition. So it just getting lost, it getting thrown out, it getting beat up, it getting played, all these types of things. You're going to really see that, I think, for a lot of those like level X cards in particular. A lot of those those cards, they had no value. I mean, the most value those cards had was for players. And there were a few that were very, very playable. Those probably had more value than some of the other ones. So, and then the regular hollows, forget about it, So, and I think one thing to think about, guys, in terms of regular hollow rarity and reverse hollow rarity, it's pulling each individual hollow or each individual reverse hollow. I think people underestimate how difficult it is to do that, or how few. I think people look at the gold stars and they say, well, each gold star is definitely a lot harder to pull or a lot rarer than a regular hollow from a set. And that isn't necessarily true if there are 30 different hollows.
Mm-hmm.
Because although you're going to pull a hollow 1 out of 3 packs, it's 1 out of 90 then to pull that individual hollow. And then you have to see, okay, well, what is it to pull? A good example is like the crystals versus the regular hollows from, that it's actually harder to pull one of those individual regular hollows and even harder to pull one of the reverse hollows because those sets were so massive. So it's, and then it becomes that demand piece versus rarity piece. But I do think people underestimate both the possible demand for some of those regular hollow cards from those middle eras, and underestimate the rarity, both of it. And so we'll see. I mean, I think we have seen when those cards do come up for sale, I've seen some very high prices for certain things. And I've been contacted by people looking for certain cards from those sets who offered me like very high value. So I do think that they could be overvalued right now, because they're such low pop, but it's a huge swing because I was buying those cards for $10. Nobody wanted them, and I didn't know if I'd ever make money on them either, because no one ever wanted them, that sort of feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that was a good little, interesting thing for people. That's the type of stuff that we, go into a little more of the analytics in detail to back up all of our more broad market opinions that we tend to share in our YouTube channels without the numbers. Let's see.
Kai asked, given we aren't even through the backlog and a lot of prices are already pretty low, it looks likely we could actually go below or back to 2019 prices. Thoughts?
So, I mean, this was always something that I would say on the channel, that people would ask, is it even possible for it to go below 2019? And the answer I would give to people when they would ask that, they asked that a lot early on in the Logan polish boom and a little bit before. And the answer I would always give is it actually is possible. The demand isn't going to get lower than it is right now. This is the answer I would give. Like, the demand isn't going to retrace from below where it was before Logan Paul and before all that sort of stuff, in my opinion. I think it's a very well-established hobby in the size that it was. There was a 3-year consolidating base that basically happened around a lot of those prices. So I felt very safe and comfortable with those prices, but the supply side has gotten so flooded with so many different cards and different things that even though the demand might be, and I think is quite a lot larger for basically everything right now than it ever has been before, the supply is so large for certain items that it has reduced prices. Now, you're not going to find any examples of cards that are at 2019 prices right now, or even close. There's another thing we went over in Patreon this month where I showed where we're really at right now. We're still at 3, 4, 5 times valuations in most things compared to not even 2019. We're just talking pre-Logan Paul. And cards had already gone up quite a bit. So, the demand is so much larger, really, and the supply actually isn't that much larger for those more high-end things. Now, other items like your lower graded, your middle graded, unlimited base, stuff like that, your hidden fates, shining fates, these types of things, like things that I think are really good cards that I think have good, potential, upside in the future. And as long as the supply can finally be absorbed over time, that's the type of stuff that we have seen. Some items I'm buying certain cards at the exact same price I bought them in 2019, like Hidden Fates cards, for example, stuff like that. It's the exact same price. So
Yeah.
in fact, cheaper. I'm buying some cards even a little cheaper. So, and in auction.
Yeah. And I do think I'm not completely sold on the fact that PSA will actually scale to 20 million cards a year. But if they do, and we go through a 5-year period where they grade 100 million cards, I think some cards could definitely have a ways down to go. Not your better stuff. I mean, the more modern, less rare, like true rarity cards are going to be most at risk of dropping, obviously. But yeah, that is a massive amount of cards. And if they're actually grading 20 million cards a year for under $20 a piece, there's a lot of cards in that. You actually mentioned it on your live yesterday. I listened to that this morning. Cards in the $80 to $200 range are like specifically in more danger.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to watch that, I kind of went over in detail why that is. And, Dan and I try to talk about that as many times as possible because people obviously don't watch whole streams. And I think that's a really, as a reseller, it's something that you just instinctively understand these kind of price flows around the danger of that price point because of grading fees. And then if it gets too cheap, people stop grading it and then the price goes back up and et cetera. So I don't think we have to cover that again. Feel free to just pick any questions that you feel like answering. We don't need to answer everything.
Yeah, I think I'm still on my computer. I've got like the early chat and then I've got the live chat on my phone down at the bottom.
People are asking some MetaZoo questions about the NFTs, about do I play? Do we play? I don't play. I'm not collecting the NFT. I'm interested in playing. My girlfriend and I actually talked about maybe playing a little bit and just like seeing if we enjoy it because we do like games. But we just like haven't gotten around to sit down and like learn the rules, which is an important step in playing a game. So oftentimes we're just like, we work a lot and we're tired and we just like to play a game that we already know how to play. And find ourselves either watching something we've already watched, a movie we've already seen, or playing a game we've already played and know how to play and feel comfortable with. So, but I plan on getting around to it. But yeah, how about you, Dan, for any of that NFT, MetaZoo, playing MetaZoo, any of that sort of stuff?
I saw the MetaZoo NFT question and I felt weird bringing it up myself because I'm actually, anybody who's following that closely, there's like a whitelist.
You're on that whitelist?
I'm whitelisted, baby. The whole NFT space is a weird thing. And I mean, there's a lot of conversation around MetaZoo and how it's hype driven and this and that. And is it really real and whatever, but I don't know. I'm taking a calculated risk, I guess. I actually went back and I bought one of the Genesis NFTs.
Yeah.
So I'm an owner of a River Dino NFT 1075. Basically I had some crypto money that I put a couple $100 that I was fully happy losing years ago. I put into crypto and it turned into a fair bit of money. So I just siphoned off a little bit of that to play around in NFTs, and MetaZoo was my first entry into that game.
I think
it's crazy.
I think MetaZoo is actually a good thing to buy an NFT in. I'm going to be completely honest with you, because I think, and this is without having any insider knowledge or anything on it, I have a feeling they're going to connect it to real world things. So
he stated that they will.
Oh, he said that. Yeah. Cause that's just this, that's where all of these like Gary V, like Steve Aoki, Logan, like that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to create experiences and cards and other things with the NFTs. And I have a feeling that the early NFTs are going to have really good rewards to kind of entice the later NFTs. And then it's going to kind of probably get worse over time. So I think that with a lot of these things, if you're early and you kind of take that risk, there can actually be more of a chance of upside. But then if it already kind of goes up and then you jump on it later, those tend to be the people who lose money or get kind of hurt. I mean, you can even see that with like the MetaZoo Rudy kits and, you know, all sorts of things. So that just tends to be a pattern. So for me, I just don't, there's so many things I like, and it's just, it's a pass for me, but I don't, but the reason I'd be interested, to be completely honest, is not because I'm interested in owning that MetaZoo NFT at all. It would be, I'm interested in what sort of physical card and or, you know, cool party or some sort of gathering or some sort of like, I'm, you know, I want to be a part of it, right? I want to see what happens and where it goes, like those types of feelings. And maybe if it's not that expensive, it's worth kind of doing.
Yeah, a large part of my consideration, I mean, honestly, as I mentioned, it's a bit of like a house money type thing. I'm playing with house money, but the other side of it is like, definitely the opportunities and the possibilities. What kind of an event could this unlock for me? What kind of an in-person event could I potentially get to go to now that I'm doing this full time? Hopefully next year, traveling to more things. I mean, maybe there'll be something a bit more MetaZoo focused that I can go to with this NFT as the key to getting into that. I don't know. We'll see where it goes, but
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then going back to like the Genesis thing, there's a lot of people talking about it in the main. They actually made like an NFT channel in the official MetaZoo server, but it's really interesting. Apparently they just like launched them in the spring and nobody really knew about it. I think they made 595 different NFTs, Bigfoot, River Dino, Hodag, just a handful of them, 50 to 100 each. And they sold them for like $1 or $2.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who knows Ethereum, the gas fees are like absurd right now. And even in the spring, they were fairly crazy. So I think it was like a $2 NFT with a $20 gas fee. Kind of absurd. But like they sat for months and people weren't buying them because they didn't really like advertise it at all. And then late summer, early fall, people kind of picked up on the fact that they existed and they all got snatched up. That's around the time that I grabbed one. Kind of an interesting release there. And I just feel like, I mean, by the time I bought one, it was several $100s. And it just feels like one of those things. Worst case, it goes to zero. Best case is significantly more than 2x. And to me, you've mentioned it before, the implied odds just feel like it's a good gamble to take at that point. Just given all the people behind it, the fact that they're in Walmart
you're
now.
Basically double gambling. You're gambling on MetaZoo and the card game succeeding, and then you're gambling on the NFTs of the card game succeeding. And I think it's both crazy, but also like I totally get it. For me though,
Vegas.
I want the real world. Like for me to ever put money into that, I want some real world connection starting off the gate, or the risk reward from me isn't there. Because there's so many things that have so much upside right now that people are like panicking in certain areas. There were times this year where I would have put more money into something like that, or I would have been more apt to put money into something like that because I felt like everything was so overpriced. And I don't like to hold cash. I always like to be putting it into things and buying things, whether that's stock or cards or collectibles or what have you. So, but in this type of environment, it's like, I'm just trying to get more and more cash because I have a lot of things there. Like I want to make some inroads on some collecting goals basically. And so yeah. I don't feel that as much desire to do something like that as I might, but again, it's a lot of these things. There are pathways for that to go up for sure. And for it to be very expensive. So.
And just tying it in, like I didn't buy that Rudy promo, but one thing that I kind of liked that he did with it, he turned it into like the original purchasers of that get a discount on all subsequent releases for Fab. And
Rudy makes more money. So he basically now people get a discount, but they still are buying from him. And so he still gets, and so more of the product is still being sold, which is great for the company. It's just beautiful.
I think
Beautiful,
Rudy,
or I don't think it's that complicated to figure out, but yeah. It's just
Rudy
a discount like anyone. I mean, TCG player gives discounts every few weeks because they're trying to get people to buy and become engaged in the hobby and to become loyal customers. And people know that if you buy it, you're going to be more invested in it because now you have a financial stake, because now you're gonna put more attention and time, and you're gonna be able to engage with it more. So Rudy, these companies, these games, it's part of why Mike handed out a lot of free product to people, because he knows that if you get product, if you have it in your hands, you're going to have more of a stake in it. You're going to have more of a connection in it. And it's why people do these sales also, these temporary sales. So I don't think, and by the way, I don't think any of that's bad. I think that's normal. But when people have these takes of like, oh my God, like it was worth it, or sucks that you didn't buy it because now you have it or you don't have it. It's like, he would love for you to keep buying it at those lower prices. You know, the more people that buy it, the better. For Rudy, for Flesh and Blood, for all these games. So, but that doesn't mean you're like a Timmy because you're buying it if you enjoy it. But I think it's important to, when you make those decisions, to understand the dynamics behind it, and so you're not thinking that like a bunch of saints are trying to like help you like achieve, I think ideally though, it's win-win. It's a great card game. They produce a great product, and people really want it and enjoy it. And then if you can get it for 15% cheaper on a TCG player, you get it $69, right? Or something for Rudy, I'm sure. I think that's probably what it is. Cheaper for those kits, all the better. Because if you're going to buy those kits anyway, that is a nice discount if you were already going to buy it.
Yeah. And I think, Mike and Rudy seem, I talked to Rudy a little bit through Patreon years ago, but not extensively. I've never talked to Mike, but they seem to be fairly similar. I've watched some of their openings together. I think Mike, like part of me being on the whitelist, I'm actually on the whitelist as a Genesis holder, which I don't know exactly what that means, but I think that there's some priority given to me in future releases of NFTs, and these theoretical future events, there might be some further benefit towards Genesis NFT holders. And this is all wild speculation, and I'm not in any way advocating that anybody buy any of these things. Just to have that out there.
Dan has given you guys the stamp of approval to go out and buy every MetaZoo NFT you can get your hands on.
That's why I didn't pull that question from chat, but since you brought it up, I figured I'd talk about it, because I like to be transparent. So like, if and when I talk about it, I don't like to just secretly own these things and be like silently benefiting from things potentially.
Fair enough. Let's see. Pokemon is all but caught up to demand. Target and Walmart are absolutely flooded with product, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. So many people are going to get caught holding. What are your thoughts?
Around me, I think it has been the case for a few months at least, or not that long, a few weeks. A few weeks at least, that you can pretty much get anything at retail. And just going off of what my items are priced at, the only exception I think being the ultra premium collection. That one is significantly above retail still online. But like ETBs, I want to say are getting down towards 60. And a lot of the collection boxes are, which I think is a good thing. It's been an unfortunate and kind of a weird thing lately, the state of modern product. I've just been given my allocation from my distributor, taking everything I could get and just dumping it onto the market at some premium over MSRP. Yet for the first time in over 12 months, I recently was contacted by my distributor. And maybe it's because I'm so small. I don't know if they're really big guys, but I can buy right now without limits, whatever that means, Chilling Reign and Battle Styles booster boxes.
That's not everything.
Not at what I could 2 years ago. Like I am paying more. I was actually surprised. Danny Fantup made a video. He buys boxes by the thousand, in the thousands, hundreds of cases. And he showed a screenshot where he was paying $86.50. That's actually the same price that I'm paying right now. I was shocked. I think it was on Darkness Ablaze. So that's one of the ones that has a fairly higher like market price.
That was back, and I assume that was back before things blew up. That he was buying thousands, right, of Darkness Ablaze. That was like right around when it came out, or he was offered it late on.
That was him. That was as it was blowing up, kind of. That was like, that was the last set that was semi-normal initially, and then that was like a reprint.
Oh no, but I'm saying it was in the beginning of when he bought. It wasn't later on when Darkness Ablaze and Vivid Voltage had already gone up a huge amount in value that he was being offered those cases. He was being offered those cases like when it first came out.
Yeah,
is what I was. Yeah. I just wanted to say, because I haven't seen the video.
But like now, like Darkness Ablaze,
I would have guessed
got
like
more
82 or 78. Probably not 78, but like 82.
I actually, let me just pull it up so I get the exact numbers.
I mean, there were people who offered me, not like dudes offering me to buy a bunch of Battle Styles booster boxes off of them, and Chilling Reign $85 shipped just to offload it. There are people who just really don't want this stuff. And
yeah, I actually just got, my distributor charged me almost $199.50 I paid for Darkness Ablaze, like just yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, if this had been like 5-6 months ago when I was finding it harder to allocate capital in ways that I wanted to, I'd probably buy some, $85, $86 shipped Chilling Reign for sure. But at this point, even if that goes to like 125, 130 in like a year, I mean, obviously there's all sorts of scenarios where like people again underestimate it. All of a sudden it gets eaten up and then it jumps up to 160. So like, it's crazy. Like, and people are so reactive that like anything can, like, I think we're still in a world where people are so FOMO-y that they like aren't willing to buy at 85, but as soon as it goes to like 130, they panic, buy it up to like 160. These just sorts of incredibly irrational behaviors. And very short-term thinking, like non-value investing type thinking. But for me to buy some of that at 85, it feels probably like fairly dead money for a while. And there are so many places that I can put that I'm going to get more enjoyment from and be able to like meet my collection goals. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough for like a lot of people bought them, I think at like 110, 120, Chilling Reign and Battle Styles, maybe 105 Battle Styles, 100, but even people who bought a lot at like 95, which was a pretty low price. I think it did go up to 115, right, at one point or something. And people were buying it then and selling it then. But once you factor in, and you always talk about eBay fees and just your time value and shipping and all these things. I mean, you're talking about if you bought it at like 95 and it goes to like 120, you're making nothing basically.
Oh yeah. It was an extremely short window, I think, but I remember at release, this was when I was still selling more things through my eBay and not through Troll and Toad. But I sold a couple of cases of Battle Styles for like 900, like 150 a box right at release. And then I think that went down pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, watching someone like Rudy shift his position so quickly on Pokemon, at least publicly. And what he says publicly is not necessarily exactly what I mean, who knows, right? To be completely honest with you. But, he made a video that I made a comment on recently that was like, basically saying that Battle Styles would go to $300 in like a few years. And I was basically just like, it could, like, I do think it could, but Rudy, remember 3 years ago when like you couldn't sell like any Ancient Origin, like any of your XY booster boxes for years and years and years. And you just threw them in a bathroom, right? Like there's this. And then you hear the chorus of people who have been in this hobby for 1 year and have no experience in this hobby and or just showing their own product come out and say, well, every booster box is higher now than it was in the past. So you just have to hold it. It's like that is true with the exception of these booster boxes. That is true. But it took a pandemic crazy insane boom after no growth for 4 to 5 years for people to see those types of crazy returns. And if you had not bought in all of those years and then happened to buy in like right before the boom started happening, and that's when you were buying a lot of these booster boxes, you would have avoided 5 years of just dead money, and then made your quick money. So it's also like, if you're interested in these things, like, do you buy now? Do you buy in 4 to 5 years? But if you buy in 4 to 5 years, do you miss it? That's why this stuff gets very like, it's absolutely fine in my opinion. And it isn't stupid to speculate on these things and buy some booster boxes. And I'm going to bet on Pokemon. And even though this stuff is being printed hugely, I think it's going to go up. And I think it's going to go to 150, 200, 300 eventually, 5, 10, 15 years down the line. It could, I really have no idea, but it just always goes back to that overly bullishness, that guarantee vibe, that feeling of like every booster box. And then like someone else says, yeah, like facts or something like that. That's when I see like, yeah, facts right here. Speaking facts. It's like, I can speak a lot of facts, and depending on how you twist facts, you can create a lot of different narratives to suit your own personal agenda. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's but yeah, my overall thoughts on that, like people getting caught holding in these types of things, I think that it's really chaotic and impossible to predict. It's impossible to predict how much they're going to print. It's impossible to predict how many waves there are going to be, and it's impossible to predict how well these opening channels continue to do, how much demand there continues to be for these things. There's just too many factors. So if you're comfortable with all that risk, go for it. If you're not, then don't.
One of the things I always go back to is like, there's precedent for all these. So MSRP theoretically, not theoretically, factually, MSRP is like what, $144 on a booster box.
Mm-hmm.
But we know historically that they sell at release for typically a little under 100 on eBay shipped. And over this past year, somehow,
and $10 less than that not on eBay if you're buying direct to avoid the eBay fees, which is where you should be buying mostly, which is what people are not doing necessarily.
Yeah, and somehow people just threw all that out the window, and they were fine paying $150 for a set that just came out 2 weeks ago, plus tax. And it's like, it was just like 2 years is not, it feels like forever in this hobby, but 2 years ago wasn't that long of a time. So if you were just doing what was like historically reasonable, paying $100 or less for you wouldn't have bought every set. You probably wouldn't have bought many of them, but you'd be buying them now. Right now, a lot of them are available at or near that price point.
And our goal is not to like bum anyone out, right? Like I think where I'm coming from with all of this is stop lying to other people who the money really matters. I think that's what upsets me. Like for a lot of people doing it, the money doesn't really matter, right? Like if they lose $30 on a couple of booster boxes, a lot of these people are probably making $100,000 a year, $80,000 a year. And this is just fun. And it's not that big of a deal. And they're talking about investing, but really like, it's just fun. And like, I think that's completely fine and they shouldn't feel bad or be stressed out. But there are people out there, and it might not be the majority, but there are people out there who just are they see some subscriber counter, they see people agreeing or saying facts, and they don't know any better. And, imagine what it was like when you just first came into the hobby. You had no idea, right? Who to listen to, what made sense, what didn't make sense. And if you had someone stating some really bold claims, and you were young, maybe impulsive, trying to make a quick buck, I don't know, some really poor decisions could be made. All right. Enough said on that, I think. Mm-hmm. Patrick Cyrus is sharing like his own personal experience with like the Diamond and Pearl Black and White hollows we were talking about earlier. Just saying that he does have a bunch, but that they're like not gradable, like pack fresh. And he says the black and white ones were a little bit better from his personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free if you see any questions, Dan, at any time.
Yeah,
But
my
you,
chat's bouncing around a bunch.
no problem. Um, Christian Diaz says, Dan, you have been in hobby for a long time. Is there still people out there with tens of mint first edition WotC hollows?
Tens of them?
Yeah,
I would assume so. Tens isn't like a substantial amount. I don't think there's anybody or not too many people out there with hundreds of them or anything, but tens of mint hollows could be a thing. I know that I've seen some, I don't know if I'd call them hordes, but there's definitely, this stuff was mass printed, especially from 99 to 01 or so. 99 to 01, and then these last 2 years, Pokemon is that's the highest print run, highest print runs we've seen. So there was a lot of product back then. There was a lot of different companies, card shops dealing it. It's really hard for us to like conceptualize because we're so engrossed in the hobby, but there's still some people out there that don't know what all this is worth. Not as much for base set first edition. That's kind of the real, but like
and they're
it would
unlikely
blow
to
your
have
mind.
those people, I think.
Tens is kind of a lot. There's not 10 people with tens of them. If there are any, there's a couple, but
Yeah.
for the most part, those would have been graded by now.
I don't know anyone. Do you actually know anyone who has like 10 to 15 like genuinely mint gem mint candidates, and they're just not graded collector. They're a collector basically. Like that's what it would have to be, right? It's that they're not a seller, they're not a flipper. They just like to collect that way, and so they've kept them that way. I don't know anyone.
I know of people with a couple, 2 to 3 maybe, like mint binder sets
Yeah.
of almost all of first edition WotC.
Sure, that's normal, I think.
Two to three is however many people there are with 1 to 3 of those, there would be orders of magnitude less with 10, but I feel like there's got to be, yeah, there's not tons of people out there with 10. I feel like there's got to be a couple, but who knows?
And also, like a lot of them are going to be eights. I mean, pack fresh, a lot of these cards are PSA eights. So what you also just have to understand is that there are going to be people who opened a bunch of product and probably never graded it because it was cheap and they just kept it, and they're probably well off, or they don't care. But like even those cards to actually get tens, it's just so unlikely.
That's a big thing. Yeah. I've opened 2 base set first edition hollows, one graded than 8, one graded than 9. Both of those were pack fresh. So yeah, when somebody says, if somebody has 10 complete base set first edition hollow sets, they might only have, well, that would be 160 hollows, right? I mean, if you do the math on what the 10 rate is for base set first edition, that's only going to be a handful of tens. I mean, that's not going to be, for Charizard, it's going to be expected less than 110, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
For maybe the easiest to grade ones, it might be 1.5 tens or something. I don't even know what the exact rates are for those, but
yeah. So I think what's more is that there could be tons of people with one complete set. And that could add up to the point where like we still have 100 more tens to be graded in the history of Pokemon ever, of like a first edition PSA 10 Charizard, including some more boxes that get opened. And then in rare occasion, one of those boxes will actually have a PSA 10 Charizard. Maybe. I would think that it's going to be very difficult, and I could be absolutely proven wrong, for there to be more than like 200, 250 PSA 10 Charizard first editions ever, like at least in the next 10 years, 10, 20 years. What do you think, Dan, about something like that? And this is like totally nonsense that we're talking because we have no idea.
I think base first is the one that is definitely the exception. I think like Jungle and Fossil, I think all of those pops, even the PSA 10s, can 10x from here if we're talking 10, 20 years out, 20 years out. We've had the conversation before. There are thousands of sealed
10X.
boxes from those sets.
Oh yeah.
So I think those could 10x from where they are. Base set first edition. Charizard will not have in 20 years.
I would feel more like 5x, but
5 to 10x. I'm happy with that range. Base set first edition though,
like that would be like 600, 700 of some of these like extremely hard to grade hollows. I don't know. It is possible. It is. If a lot of it gets opened up, then it's going to happen. But for that to happen, you'd have to have like a couple thousand boxes opened, in my opinion, at least. And I don't know if that's going to happen. We have 5,000 jungle boxes opened. If you had 5,000 jungle boxes opened, let's say you get maybe like one out of 10, that's going to be like 550. You might have like 500, but that isn't nearly enough. Like you're actually going to need even more boxes opened at those rates. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Don't forget the 9s that will be regraded. Don't forget the cards that are already open and need to be graded.
Yeah. What is really a 10? Who knows?
MetaZoo Games is in the chat. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike. How are you doing tonight? Yeah. So I remember though, like 8 months ago, 9 months ago, I was getting so much flack. People saying that there wasn't going to be even like 10 more in some of the pops and some of these things. And I used to just sit there and be like, you were really confident about something that you.
I mean, I've heard people that seemed really confident that there were less than 100 remaining jungle first edition boxes or like
there are guys out there who have like 50, 60, 70. Like it's
yeah. I mean, I've definitely heard some silly things tossed around. These things were mass printed.
Yeah.
There is attrition.
I don't think 10 times. I think 4 to 5 times, might even be less. I wouldn't be shocked if it's only 2 times. I'll be completely honest with you, because it's just too expensive. The booster boxes aren't opened and it's just so hard to get a 10. I wouldn't be shocked if that Clefable or Jolteon or some of these, Clefable in particular, Snorlax, Wigglytuff, I think are probably the lowest 3. If those cards are, what are they, probably in the 50 pop now, if those cards only get to like 150 someday, but they'll be like 2,009s, 2,509s. There'll be 3,009s, maybe more, maybe 4,009s on some of those. So,
yeah, I mean, part of my thing is I mentioned earlier, if we do get back to $20 grading, it's tough. Pokemon has always been weird. Like 5 years ago, I was cracking jungle boxes left and right, jungle and fossil boxes, because they were positive EV. Yeah. And they're not really quite there now, but I think they're getting closer every time. The boxes are dipping a little below 10,000 now. I haven't run the numbers on it. I'm not looking at it because PSA grading is not even essentially open. But the
problem is the commons and uncommons. That's what got decimated. Like the reason jungle was a positive EV was because because people way overvalued those uncommons commons for a while, because your Pikachu, your Eevee, your Cubone, your Jigglypuff, whatever it was, particularly the Eevee and the Pikachu also, were going for like $1,000 at the top. I think I saw one sell for 1,200. So when you have a card that you were going to pull 6 times, at least you're probably going to pull like 12 of them in one box, and probably 8 out of the 12 are going to be 10s. That's $8,000 in EVs that you're pulling in expected value right there. Just think about that. And then that's an additional. And so that's when you understand like why the booster box prices like got to 25,000 or whatever it was, 20 some thousand, but there's still, you could make money. It's so stupid.
We had a lengthy chat on those on your channel about a year ago now.
Yeah. People can revisit that.
Yeah.
We had an ethical debate about whether or not it was ethical for us to be selling those to people at the prices.
It was on December 3rd. So we're coming up on the anniversary of that.
James
is in the chat now too.
James?
He just got back 21st edition Meowth PSA 9. Should he fire sell or fire sell?
So he got Jungle Meowth.
PSA 9.
PSA 9s, yeah. I think CGCs are pretty rough right now. I've been buying like some CGCs that have been dropping under $10 a card, but I want to say those you could probably still get $50 for in 9 now, maybe even a little more in the way you sell. You seem to get so much when you just people bin things from you. And I'm like, what?
I think Meowth is actually I'm the lowest on eBay. Yeah. Advertising for myself. I have one up for $38.
Okay, so that's pretty low.
Don't buy it because James has 20 more.
That's pretty low. Yeah. I mean, I think if that card gets down to 25, it just no one's grading it anyway right now because it's $150 a card. But then you start getting into a situation where you actually might see it uptick before it comes back down again. It might hit that sweet spot, James. So if you're looking to make an extra $10 per, no, you should just sell them and move on probably. But if you're looking to time the market and make an extra $10 per card, I don't know. CGC is really interesting, which is the amount of that stuff that I'm seeing flood. Lot of commons, uncommons, first editions flying through there. I'm sure James is seeing that in his auctioning stuff he's got going on.
Yeah.
Assignment. Basic Trainer says, gun to your head and balance is not a choice. Is life too short that you have to take it seriously? Or is life too short that you can't take it seriously?
Let me find it so I can read it. Is life too short that you have to take it seriously, or life too short that you can't take it seriously?
Yeah, take life seriously or don't take life seriously. What's the better path? That's what he's asking. You have to choose one.
And you can't say balance because the right answer is balance. Take the right thing seriously, and don't get like caught up on the small things. I think just generally the better advice is life is too short that you can't take it seriously, because I think too often, and this is like in reference to something that's fairly recent and I've seen in the chat multiple times, too often people take small things too seriously. Making mountains out of molehills is a saying that like my grandpa used to say, or someone used to say that.
Yeah, more of the time we human beings probably take things too seriously. But yeah, you have like the things that are actually important, the things that sustain you, like if you don't take anything seriously, you will be incredibly miserable pretty soon.
But he said you can't use, that's the right answer. Balance is the right answer, but you can't use that. So I went towards the one that's like,
don't take anything seriously, actually. Take nothing seriously.
Yeah.
Hurting other people, like taking care of your family or yourself or your health, none of it. Particularly those things. Don't take any of that seriously. Bu Sutherland says, what's the best resource for learning about trophy cards? Our Patreon.
We've got a really good video saved and uploaded from a couple months ago where Jake went over a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I went over every trophy card that has an under 1,000 distribution and that is a accumulation of effort with a lot of help from people who are on E4. I don't want to name the wrong names offhand, but it certainly is not all of my effort for sure coming up with that list. So big thanks to people who've been in this hobby for a long time sharing info. But I took a list that like Enlightened Bulbasaur, for people who know him, Mark, something he had worked on for a long time with a number of other guys. I took it and updated it with some changes, and I put in like up-to-date population reports, up-to-date price info in it, all that type of thing, which was missing from his list. Smitty Werman says, how do I outsource all shipping to golden auctions? I'm not even reading questions. I'm just like I'm trying to read them and I'm like, all right.
That was one of the comments that I referenced about people taking things too seriously. That's the hot news though for the day, right? So in a live stream, we should kind of touch on it maybe.
Pokemon Radar's here. Good to see you, man. Miss you. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, we need some more radar content.
Yeah. Definitely should get John back on here at some point if he's free, just to hang out. I think the three of us would have fun. You want to touch on golden auctions and Scott's video, or do you want to pass?
We can talk about it. I talked about it. It was a question. So Nick, Old School Pokemon, and I do a podcast every other week, and it came up in ours. Actually, the first comment on this live stream was "You say booyah," quoting me. No harm, no foul. That was my take on it. I guess on E4 though, I kind of posted like, hey, well, did the cards get damaged? I guess one of them may have gotten damaged, but Scott bought 4 packs, roughly $45,000. I bought 2 packs, about $20,000. I went to the event. So like I took mine home with me. There was no shipping involved because the first reasonable response that I came up with was there were about 12 people, I want to say, that didn't go to the event and didn't have someone there to like open their cards and take them home. So did those shipments get handled the same way? I have no idea. The only one I've seen come out is Scott's. But the Blastoise wasn't in there. So all the cards weren't in there. I don't know if he only got the Blastoise graded directly with PSA, but like when I left the event, I had just my commons and uncommons and then non-hollow rares. My Magneton first edition and my Shadowless Charizard both went to PSA directly. So there really wasn't $45,000 in the envelope. My $20,000, I mean, I hit Shadowless Charizard and I didn't get $20,000 back between my pack and Nick's packs. So of that $45,000, a lot of that was lost on the stage. When those packs were open on the live stream, $30,000, $35,000 were spent. Several $1,000s went to PSA. A couple $1,000s were in that padded envelope. Could they have been packed better? Absolutely. Who packed them? I don't know enough information on how they went from where they were open on the stream to how they got to Scott. I wasn't the guy packing them. I wasn't in charge of it. I actually talked with Nick before the event happened. I was kind of up in the air on whether or not I was going until the last minute. And had I not gone, Nick was going to take my cards. He was going to open my cards and take them home with him. So I had prearranged my cards getting back to me. I don't know if other people did that too. And Scott was like literally the only person who had it shipped. Again, no idea who dropped the ball there. I don't really want to or like to speculate, but it feels like a lot of secondhand outrage over the whole thing, which just kind of like confuses me.
I mean, my first response is like putting myself in Scott's shoes. When I open that and I see that there aren't top loaders, my heart drops for sure. And I'm like, yikes. Okay. So that is stressful. And that's happened to me a bunch of times, by the way, over the years where I bought expensive things, not necessarily from an auction house, but which is part of the weird thing about, and to that point, I, agree with sort of like Scott's sentiment of like, they're getting all this money, to defend or not necessarily defend, but to say like, Scott, if Scott's implying that there's $45,000 worth of value in there, and that's what was at risk, that's obviously not true. There's much less value in there. There's much less at risk. But he did pay that much, and they did get that much, right? They got that $7,000, and to not put in top loaders, is ridiculous. Like, I agree. Did it need like a whole video for a bunch of Scott's followers and people to get like really upset? Probably not. I mean, I think that if that happened to me, and it has happened to me a number of times, I call the company or I call the seller and I try to like make it right or like fix it or get it figured out. Maybe he already did that. Maybe he felt like he had to put leverage. He had to make it public to then put, this is all speculation, right? And I have no idea, but for them to respect basically, and for him to get his money back. And obviously it worked. I mean, I heard he got the Ken Golden or whatever reached out to him or something. Again, speculation, but so I think people's reactions from what I heard about like incredible outrage, and they didn't even know. The other part we haven't talked about is like, did any of the cards actually get damaged except that Abra, was it, or something that was on top? There seemed to be one card that Scott saw damage on. The rest of the cards were in sleeves, at least. I've gotten cards just thrown in a freaking like a brown box without even a plastic bag or sleeves before. And I'm not going to throw anyone under but I just got like from an influencer, from someone else, I just got a package and there was a card that was completely destroyed and now I have to get a refund on, so this stuff happens. I think trying to understand why it happened, was it Golden's fault? Was it someone theirs fault? Was this a weird situation where Golden actually wasn't packaging them and it was actually someone like at the event who didn't really know Pokemon who packaged it, and then they just threw it in a Golden thing and sent it directly to him from the event? I don't know if this is like a one-off or a weird thing. I think the way it came off is like Golden sucks, and a lot of people are like, now we can't shop, people saying things like, I'm never gonna buy Golden again, all these types of things. And my response is like, you're gonna buy as soon as there's a good deal. Like, this is gonna blow over in 2 weeks. It's the same thing with like some of the PWCC shilling drama. People just are gonna go to the best deals. I think the good that can come out of it, it'd be nice to have a follow-up or just get some sense of like what happened. I don't think it really matters that much. I don't think Scott will probably care that much about it once he gets his money back, probably speculating. And, it is silly and frustrating. Now, I do think it's funny that he trolled them throughout that video. I watched about half the video and he started trolling them on like how to correctly sleeve cards and put it in a top loader and then put it in a tea bag. And that was actually pretty funny. So I got a kick out of that. I think people's reaction though, because like, and going back to what we were talking about before, like so serious, like, first of all, Scott's going to probably very likely get his money back and they're going to figure it out. And no offense to Scott, but like Scott's also like, this is not like his life savings in this sort of thing. It isn't really $45,000 worth. And like, they're like, it's going to be okay. Like I'm sure he's going to get well respected. He's a major influencer and a major, really celebrity within this hobby. I'm sure they're going to care about his business and it'll probably work out fine. So I think people out there just kind of, I think it's fun. It's great that you're defending someone that you really look up to and deserves that sort of defense and respect. But I also think mistakes happen. These things happen.
I heard there was a good meme too. Like basically Mason was looking for a 30-second recap. So Scott had somebody else open his packs at the Pokemon Saves the World event in Vegas. It was Merps from E4, if anyone knows him. On stage, the hits were being sleeved and card savored, and then those went to PSA. So whatever Scott sent to PSA, the bulk of the money went there. The Blastoise, that stuff was all fine. But the remainder of the cards were put in sandwich bags. That was just like a temporary vessel that was given to the people to get them off the stage. And then again, in my instance, I took possession of them and I took them home. I could have put them all in sleeves and top loaders there if I wanted to. I don't know if from when Merps left the stage, I don't know if he had the sandwich bags in his hand the same way that I did or not. But yeah, at the end of the day, I guess when Scott was going through them in his video today, well, they packed me a lunch. They could have at least put in some of those cosmic brownies or whatever. Like I saw a few different memes coming up from it. Unfortunately, I didn't see.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So it sounds like
Scott is funny. Like he made is a funny, like there are definitely funny elements of it, so it's funny.
Yeah. I'm bummed I missed out on it, but just for so many, like people like to grab their pitchforks. And I saw a lot of people on on the forum or on Facebook commenting about it. It was kind of everywhere. What do they call
Yeah.
that? The Streisand effect. When you try to remove something from the internet, it spreads more than it ever would have. But like the secondhand outrage from people that were not remotely affected by it is just like,
and it's
so
just
many
it's very selective because like people get mistreated all the time. And so this isn't necessarily at Scott, but like people, like I cannot tell you how many people get scammed and come to me all the time and nobody gives a shit. Excuse my language, I just swore. But like part of it is kind of like that doesn't mean we shouldn't care, and we should, you know, I mean we should care, and nobody knows that feeling. But I mean, Dan and I know that feeling, that exact feeling of like you're excited to get some mint cards that you're going to grade, and then you look in a package and it's like shit, you know, it's they're all, and then you're just like, okay, please don't be damaged. And the fact that it's from a, you know, an auction house and you paid all this premium and you're frustrated that they're charging so much premium, I get it. Like trust me, it's like I would have had the same irritation and reaction as Scott. So in all of that sense. So yeah. All right.
we knew it was going to come up. It was bound to come up.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm also interested, right? Did it happen to other people? Is there a way to help out those people? Like that's the type of thing that goes into my mind. You know, Scott shedding, maybe they can get their money back too. Scott helping to shed light on that. You know, I don't know. All that type of stuff would be good.
Yeah, hopefully, because there were at least 12 or so people that weren't there. And then the way that they did it, they had like influencers open the packs. They had Super Duper Danny. Like I pulled a Shadowless Charizard. She pulled the other Shadowless Charizard. I'm not sure who she pulled it for, but did that one. That one got graded actually a PSA 9. But like the cards that went with it were those just shipped in a sandwich bag in a bubble mailer. I have no idea. It sounds like Scott had one of his cards damaged. If they shipped out 12 packages with these sandwich bags, if somebody's entire thing got folded in half, hopefully Ken Golden is calling them up too and making them whole in whatever way he's salvaging the issue with Scott. And Scott did mention that there would be a follow-up video in a couple days, so it'll be interesting to see if he covers any of that.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, none of us were affected in any way. So like, let's just hang out, wait and see what happens in that video and put down the pitchforks and the torches. Maybe people just like to get riled up, I think.
Yeah. I mean, what I find ironic is the same people who will call for no drama in certain things that they don't care about, when it's something they care about or a creator that they care about, then they get dramatic. It's like, this is a creator I care about, I'm going to get dramatic for them. But this other person who has drama or is upset, who gives a crap about that? Like, it's very, and that's just human beings, right? That's whatever. That's what we're all like. We're very tribal, and you know. But it's I try to avoid tribalness and wait for facts. And I think you can have nuanced opinions, and you can, you know, you don't have to assume one thing or another. So some people here are saying like Dragon Shiz says he did a video on it, which is interesting, like a reaction video. So he must have seen the whole thing. I would imagine. Yeah.
So Scott pulled his video fairly quickly, but then the Green Shiz, his video stayed up a little longer. So I think people were watching it for a little bit longer beyond when Scott privated it.
TCGs. All right. Some comments I'm not going to read out loud, but are right and funny.
I'm still here. Sorry, I just yanked out my I slid my keyboard tray and I yanked out my camera.
Oh, no worries. Just looking for the middle of the chat. Kind of went to the bottom. some MetaZoo questions more in the middle. Now we're planning on having Mike on the channel again at some point to hang out and talk about it. So I think I will probably not do any more MetaZoo tonight.
Kai asked me, how did my last Jungle first box and CGC grading pan out? Oh, I didn't. So Kai, I didn't even sell those. One thing that I'm kind of doing for my own personal collection, an early goal was to have a complete WotC first edition holo set in PSA 9. In the past several months, I've actually been transitioning those to CGC 8.5s, 9s. I've actually been building like multiple sets. I've been able, in many cases, I've been able to sell my PSA 9s and buy like 2 or 3 CGC 8.5s, 9s, sometimes as parts of larger sets and then selling off the excess. But yeah, I've always, I think Jake's described himself as a bit of a value investor when it comes to these types of things. And I'm the same way. 5 years ago, I saw the most value in PSA 9s. Today, I see the most value in CGC 8.5s as a buyer, not as someone grading them. If you grade a card as a CGC 8.5 that otherwise would have been a PSA 9, you're in rough shape if you're looking to sell it.
Hyrule saying Golden Pack Pratt's cards like a Troll and Toad order.
Troll and Toad near mint.
You never know how it's gonna just throw in an envelope. No sleeve, nothing. I do think, I guess, just to go back to that, I did have one thought, like just as a collector, it's painful when pack fresh cards aren't treated well. And that's also when I watch streams and like valuable, expensive, or just like cool cards that it's like there aren't that many of those cards in that perfect condition that are probably going to be still opened. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, but even that whole box opening, it was very rushed, you know, at least the online version. I heard in person, it was a lot different of an experience and didn't feel as, you know, cringy, to throw that word, you know, that the young people use. In person as maybe it was online. I feel like they really rushed through these like first edition packs and we're just kind of trying to get through everything. That to me kind of goes hand in hand with when I see people not pack them or send them or ship them well. It's like you don't give a crap about the cards. So it's not even just about the money. It also becomes like, yeah, it feels like you don't care about Pokemon. It feels like you don't care about the event. You don't care about these cards. You don't care about them surviving in really good condition. I know even when I pull modern cards, I carefully sleeve them and all these types of things. It's the type of collector I am. So I think that on that level too, I can get some of the frustration beyond the financial part.
I agree with what you're saying, but to an extent, I think some people take it like really far. Sometimes I'll be watching a live stream and people are like, oh my goodness, he's not wearing gloves. He's not immediate. Like that's absolutely ridiculous.
And that just comes from people who don't know what they're talking about, generally speaking. Well, you know, and we can say, well, holding gloves can actually be worse because you could bend it or you don't know your pressure. I think that is also kind of ridiculous. There's a lot of like comments on both sides of these things that I all find kind of ridiculous. You know, try not to put your thumb on the holo or on the card. If you could hold it on the side, that's better. If you do, it's probably going to be okay. The card's probably going to survive. It will be okay, guys. You know, I mean, I think that I like some of that because it's like I really care about it, all these types of things. But then part of it also just feels like you're just trying to hate on people. You're just trying to be like, you just want to complain and fair enough. You know, I mean, that's a big reason why people come on the internet is because they can be anonymous and they can just complain about things that they don't even necessarily care about. So.
Yeah. Just outrage is like a go-to emotion or feeling for the internet sometimes. And I just,
Yeah.
life's too short to always be outraged, especially about things that have no effect on you. That's my own take on that.
Yeah, and aren't like negatively impacting, Yeah, it's or if you're outraged, you can't do anything productive. But yeah, okay. Enough of our
Yeah.
soapbox, middle-aged soapbox. Okay. Jake, are you hearing thoughts about the specific trophies that Logan bought? Yes, but I don't know how accurate it is versus speculation. So um, I think you and I have talked about it, Dan, and speculated or heard information about like what we think this person sold these cards to him, basically. But I don't feel any benefit of like saying it now or beforehand. We'll just wait and see, and maybe we'll be right, maybe we'll be wrong.
Yeah, the only like the main information that I speculate from is somebody else's paid content, which I don't really want to discuss too much. Other people's like gated content and
which already gives it away.
Well, on top of that, it's a really long leap. Like there's not,
yeah.
It wouldn't, very circumstantial things. But a lot of it's out there. There's a lot of people who speculate a lot, and you can find speculation if you want to on YouTube. There's a lot of it out there.
Retrograde, it says all the hate for Golden makes me want to set up an account with them on the off chance I get deals. Yeah, that's my exact instinct when I see people hate something. When PWCC went through their thing, it's part of why I went so hard in that first auction. I was like, this is going to be a great opportunity. People are going to overreact in a negative way, and I'm going to be able to potentially pick up some deals. I don't think that's going to happen here. And like, I really think this is going to blow over extremely quickly, but that is the type of instinct I tend to have I mean, am I going to think twice about buying like a pack opening lot from them without making sure that they like fix this in the future? Maybe, but I'm not buying a pack opening lot anyway. So, and I really tend to buy graded cards from them. And it's obviously when buying graded cards, it's not an issue.
Yeah. And they're an auction house that's been around for a while. I think I'd say they're quite reputable. I like to think that
sure
Scott will be made whole for whatever damage was done, not just because he's Scott. Like I actually genuinely believe that if one of the lesser known people who may have bought a pack and had it shipped, I'm pretty confident that they would have rectified any situation that popped up. They're not going to refund somebody the entire purchase price.
Yeah.
Because one,
not
like those weren't even in there, but like I think that they would rectify like the actual damages. I mean,
maybe there's just so many stories where these places just say you damaged it or like prove it, and you're just like, I can't prove it. It came and it was damaged, and they're like, well, we didn't like we don't. There's no like guarantee that we're sending top loaders. Like that's not part of I don't know. And I hear I hear stories where it works out for people, and then I hear stories where that doesn't work out and where they fight them for a long time, and then it becomes like really frustrating and difficult. I think I forget who was telling me like they had to bring like they had to sue over some grading mistake. That's it's slightly different, but the grading companies sit within the same vein. A grading company damaged a really, really high value card, and now they're having to sue because they won't take ownership. They said that that's how the card came. Just these types of things.
On that point, I trust Golden more than I trust PSA.
Yes, yeah. So these things are also financial calculations. You know what I mean? It's like a situation like this where it's $7,000 versus a $150,000 trophy card or something like that. They're like these things. These companies are not like, they're not saints either. They have bottom lines, and and certain things are going to be worth their time to litigate or fight financially. And then other things are not going to be. That it's not worth the bad publicity. It's not worth the headache. Just pay Scott $7,000 back or whatever, what I mean? Whatever it ends up being. So Scott may end up getting more money than the cards are worth.
Yeah, if an Abra was the only card damaged, even if it was the first edition one, what is that card? $300 in PSA 10, $400. I mean,
I don't even think that probably. Yeah.
it's
At
in
this
that
point.
vicinity. It's
Yeah.
not. It's definitely not substantially
Actually,
higher.
Abra's pretty pop. Yeah. I was looking actually not too long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I recently auctioned a couple of the lesser PSA 10 commons, and they were
Yeah.
like 150, $200.
But Abra gets a little more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Cause I was thinking like Doug, like Diglett, Pidgey, Rattata. Rattata in particular seems to always be the biggest loser, I find. But Abra is more popular. Jake, have you ever explained the canvases behind you? I always stare at them and wonder why you chose them. Also, Dan, I didn't really choose them. It's just what was behind. This is one of the only places that I can do this in my house, because where I'm living currently, that is not going to be like in the way of my girlfriend and other people. So that's why I do them here. This is a painting I do like. I think it's a nice painting. But there wasn't like a bunch of thought where I was like, I have a lot of options and this is the best painting. I also didn't move any paintings. I didn't move anything. Zero effort work has gone into the studio. All the effort goes into trying to say things that are valuable over here. But I will be, I am moving probably in sometime in the next few months. Probably closer to 3 months, 2-3 months. And the plan is to actually have a like Pokemon stuff in the background. And then the channel's going to blow up all of a sudden because people are going to recognize it's actually Pokemon. But Dan's got got a few things back there. I recognize that like there's some Pokemon stuff on your screen, which is pretty good. I have 0 Pokemon on my screen.
Yeah, and I haven't. So I got this nice new office, nice freshly painted walls, and then for a few weeks, maybe even a couple months, like I just didn't want to put, after having painted it, I didn't want to put holes in my nice brand new wall. But now I'm at that point where I've got a few holes in. On this side over here, it's even a wider wall. So at some point I'll be like flipping my camera over to give a different backdrop. I've got several uncut sheets. My frames are actually sitting on the other side of my monitor. I need to get those framed up and get a couple of those hung. One of the issues that I noticed, even with this, occasionally it will pick up, like I've got a TV across that way. It picks up like a glare from that. So uncut sheets and stuff. Jason of J&J's mentioned that I do have like a Topps Chrome uncut sheet, which I'd love to show, but like lighting, the reflections and the glare is really tough to have that behind me. But I do want
that. Are you one of the influencers on that?
No, Nick is.
Oh, how did you get? I thought only people who were influencers got those.
So every influencer got one, and then if you donated $10 or more, you got an entry through any of these influencers last year. Leonhardt last year, he actually, I guess it's a good time to kind of shout that out because it's just a really good thing that he's doing. Last year, Leonhardt and all these people and everyone in their community raised almost $500,000 for NAMI, the National Alliance Mental Illness. Yeah. This year he's going for $1 million. So this was kind of like, it was kind of a thing that you got entered into a raffle if you donated, and I just happened to win. I actually won Rhyme Styles. I donated through several of them, and I won Rhyme Styles giveaway for that. So I think this is one of like 30 of these posters, which is pretty cool, I think. Knowing and having
sorry.
I was just going to say, knowing and having met a lot of the people on that at various times, several of them were in Vegas and I got to meet. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I recognize it. I remember Gary talking to me about that poster and about, what was going on.
I'm not big enough to be on it though. Not nearly.
Kai says, any additional thoughts on PSA not grading art cards, illustrators, etc., and actually delisting some of them? Will PSA be liable to pay out or buy them out? So we have someone who works for PSA who was talking to us about this. I think you might have been there, Dana. I can't remember. In the Patreon. I don't think there was any new information. I think he said they're not delisting anymore, I think is what he said. But they're not grading ones. They're not grading new ones that can't be confirmed that they're from the winner, from the artist specifically. Is that the latest? I have too much information sometimes in my head to remember things accurately.
I believe that's right. And it's a little bit dicey though, because like I've bought a couple Mellies, the Melly Pikachu from Melly. Yeah. And she gave like a personalized note with each.
Yeah.
Well, I graded 2 of them without using the notes. So like I don't have any extra copies, but if I did acquire extra copies, who's to say I don't use the note I didn't use prior to grade an extra copy? Like it's just a weird thing. I'm not a huge fan
of devilish mind at work over there. We've got an evil mind at work.
I'm not a huge fan of PSA's stance on this. I read somewhere, and it could have been just completely made up, but they considered not grading any of the gold star dogs from Entei, Roku, and Suicune from Unseen Forces. And that's just silly to me. It's unfortunate what happened with that. It's unfortunate that extra copies are a thing, but PSA's sole responsibility is verifying the card was made on the proper equipment and all that. CGC goes a bit silly in the other direction, where there's kind of a joke was like,
I hate what they do.
Not only will CGC grade, like PSA is too like hesitant to grade certain things. CGC will slab it and say, this was stolen from the factory 3 months
PSA
before
bothers me. Yeah. PSA bothers me less than CGC on this, but I agree with you. I'm in the middle where I'm like,
they're both 100%. Stupid and terrible.
It's stupid. They're be an authentication service. You're not the police. You're not detectives trying to figure out like where did this come from? And it's too much. I think if the police or if somebody was able to say this is an extra copy or this is definitely fake or whatever, maybe that could be a strange situation where they if they could really identify them, where they could do something like that. Outside of something like that, again, getting an artist letter, just like Dan said, he could just use his artist letter. You could fake one. You could ask the artist, hey, I have an extra copy. I'll pay you a couple $100 if you give me an artist letter to me. There are all sorts of issues, and it's just not for PSA, in my opinion, to get involved in. I completely agree. It's also, I don't think it's that massive of an issue. It's now, if there are thousands of extra copies at the market of some of these Art Academy cards and these other sorts of things, I still think it just is what it is, and you get screwed. If you invested in those and you had them, it just gets diluted and it sucks. But then it would really obviously affect the population reports. A lot of people would lose money theoretically or potential value in their cards collection. And it just is what it is. You took the gamble. Extra copies can be a reality. But that I would understand a little bit more. But this just seems sort of like out of nowhere. I think that was part of what it was like. None of us really felt this was that much of a problem or a concern, sort of the high end collectors in these spaces. And then all of a sudden they're like, PSA's really over busy. They're way backed up. They can't get our cards back. But hey, like, we're really concerned about that you guys like snuck in some Art Academies and Pikachu illustrators, and we're going to delist them. I don't know. But CGC's response to this way more irritating to me, and they're sort of like specialty labels and the things they're doing.
Inadvertent early release.
I don't like it.
No,
I really don't like it. It's upsetting.
I'm not a very large fan of any of the grading companies out there, but we have what we have, and that's what it is.
Sterling Sharper says, how do you guys keep track of everything when selling cards for tax purposes? Do you just keep track of all your expenses on spreadsheets, for example? Do you use an accountant? Definitely accountant. We could probably speak on this a little bit, but I mean, you really want to, so if you are a reseller, for example, you and it's going to depend on the state, and they're all going to be sorts of rules. And we're not tax experts, but very rudimentary. And maybe we shouldn't even do this, but you're going to be, if you're not paying sales tax, if you have a resell license, and so you're exempt from paying sales tax when you buy things off of eBay, auction houses and individuals, whatever. When you sell that same item, you're responsible for collecting that sales tax and then paying that sales tax to the government. If you're not a reseller and you're more of like a collector, and you hold something for over a year, generally you're going to be paying more like capital gains tax when you sell that. There's going to be capital gains tax versus if you're a reseller, it can be like a tax under income tax. You really need to talk to an accountant.
Yeah.
And you need to keep meticulous, the hardest thing and the most important thing is to know your cost basis for things. If it's going to be a capital gains tax or an income tax situation, you want to know your cost basis. You want to know how much you're making so that you're going to pay on that. And then you want to know, if you're a reseller, you want to have a good system of tracking what is your inventory, tracking what isn't your inventory, tracking what's in your collection, tracking those things that you need to grab sales tax for if you sell it, and the things that you might not if you paid sales tax initially as a collector. Anything you want to add to all of that, Dan, or does that feel like a pretty good?
The initial thing is definitely talk to a professional. I started the wrong way 7 years ago when I got back into the hobby. I didn't really start as a business, but part of my underlying motivation was always like to get things as cheap as possible. And early on, I found the best way to get things as cheap as possible is to buy more than you need, buy a large collection, sell off what you don't want, and then your profit is kind of the cards. Well, so from very early on, unintentionally, in many ways, I was acting as a business. And I had a personal credit card. I was buying gas, I was buying groceries, and I was buying Pokemon cards. That first year was a nightmare when I got the 1099 from PayPal and I had to pick out what was what. So if you're doing this with like a profit motive, talk to an accountant, set everything up the right way. You don't need to go get an LLC, but you can do a DBA, all this different. I'm not going to get too deep into it because you should talk to an accountant. But like a separate business account, a separate business credit card, isolate everything, and then it makes everything way easier. So like in my inventory right now, I have tens of thousands of cards. I mean, if we count like raw cards, hundreds of thousands of cards, counting like raw bulk all over the place. And I don't have a spreadsheet that tracks every single thing that I own. You can do a cash basis or you can do an accrual basis. Again, these are all things you need to delve deeper into with a tax attorney or an accountant. Yeah. So
if you have it easily on your card, then you can see, okay, this is how much I spent, this is how much I made, rather than knowing each individual thing, within that, the hundreds of thousands, and how do you break up these large lots and what's worth what, it's impossible to do. So the other thing is having like multiple eBay accounts. So having one personal eBay account, having one reseller eBay account can also really help you. So you buy, for your collection, you want to buy it from your non-reseller account where you're paying sales tax. I mean, this is if you want to be an honest person, right? I pay sales tax on things that I want for my personal collection and don't plan to sell. So I keep that separate from my reselling business where I'm planning on reselling those items. And then I don't pay the sales tax there, for example. Okay. All right. So, but yeah, talk to a tax professional. We both have accountants and it might be different for your state or a country.
Yeah. And even within the same states, every county has their own building that kind of handles all that. Different sales tax rates by county, by town, city. It's all over the place. So you need to talk to a local tax professional.
All right. Wasabi says, what are your guys' thoughts of the Aoki vault?
I've seen a bunch about it, but I don't even know exactly what it is. Do you just buy like a mystery box and then you get one singular slab?
I think that there are various levels of mystery boxes, and I think you can get like merch and stuff in it too. Like, I think like it's not even just cards. That's what I want to say offhand. I think there are various value levels, and I have not bought one. Honestly, I can't really talk on it because I've never bought one. So I have no idea. Is that enjoyable? I have checked them a couple of times because I was intrigued on maybe buying one just to see what was in it to go for one of the lower ones, but they were like always sold out. So,
it's sold out right now. It looks like,
so I don't know.
Looks like there's diamond, gold, and magma.
I mean, generally speaking, you're not going to get your value from mystery, but products, but maybe Aoki is actually putting more value than it's worth and you're actually getting a deal. I honestly don't know. So you'd have to judge that by what comes in your package. And then you still won't know because maybe you got a lucky package or an unlucky package. And that's all part of that mystery of the mystery box. You really want to trust the person, the business, the creator, whatever it is, if you're buying mystery boxes from them, because it's a way. Like you could get a really low mystery box, but that offset the cost of a really expensive mystery box they sent out. So they could be like a legit, seller of these mystery boxes and you just happen to get unlucky. Or they could all be crap. And his excuse is just like, well, there's a really good one. Like someone got the first edition Charizard out there in the world. And that's why you got so screwed.
Well, that's kind of the nature. I mean, if you go to your local card shop and you buy a $3.99 retail booster pack, what % of the time are you losing money? Most of the time. I mean, that's the way the hobby is designed from the booster pack portion of it. So he's just getting in on that game there, I guess.
Beidou GMS says, any thoughts about the crazy funding numbers of these new TCGs on Kickstarter? Nostalgex and Grand Archive both raised over 700,000 and going compared to MetaZoo's 18K. What are our thoughts on
that? Interesting. I haven't been on Kickstarter too much, but over the summer I took a look at it. Just given how crazy MetaZoo went, it intrigued me enough to go over there and see what was going on. I just pulled up the Nostalgics one right now. It's interesting though, because I think MetaZoo gets a lot of undeserved hate for artificial scarcity and all this and that, but people need to realize and keep the context that the Kickstarter didn't immediately sell out. Like some of the Kickstarter print run was low because it wasn't even fully funded out of the gates, like this Nostalgics is. So it'll be interesting to see what a 10 times funded Kickstarter. This says it has 40 days to go and it's already almost 9x its goal. As far as I understand, MetaZoo didn't fully fund it even by the end of it. Like I think Mike had excess Kickstarter product when it got off the ground, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking. I guess it did ultimately. It had a $10,000 goal, and it raised 18,200. MetaZoo did, but the time frame for that I don't fully know.
It's all the same stuff. It's the same thing as new grading card companies starting. During a bull period like this, you're going to have new grading card companies start. You're going to have new auction houses. You're going to have people doing consignment businesses like our friends. You're going to have people doing Patreons and content channels like we are. You're going to have more of that. You're going to have more of these card businesses trying to start new cards. That's what happens during times like this. And the reality is that it's actually really good for the strongest stuff. And it's good for the long run. It means that there's a lot of demand and interest but it's going to overshoot. There's going to be way too many. There's, all these types of things like in every cycle. So which ones are going to succeed? Which ones aren't going to succeed? I would focus on the leadership. I think is really important. I think the management team, I think the connections that people have are really important. I think that, something like MetaZoo and FAB connecting with, or MetaZoo connecting with Steve Aoki, who has like a ton of celebrity, connections, as well as now getting really into the sports card world and is making all sorts of friends and connections in the sports card world. I see all these influencers now promoting MetaZoo. from Logan Paul to some of the crypto. I forget. I don't remember his name. Andrew Jeek or something. Jick. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Andre Jick.
Yeah, I saw a video of him just casually in a video. He did like a magic trick with some like MetaZoo cards, and he gets like hundreds of thousands of views. Like and it had nothing to do with the video. He just like threw it in there because he probably got paid for that, or he has some sort of deal or relationship, or he gets product, or just is doing something for a friend. Who knows? But that type of stuff matters a lot more than $800,000 Kickstarter. Like that means nothing, right? Like random people giving money because they want to like make more money off of something. What you want to know what is the business plan. What are the connections? How are they going to get it into Walmart? How are they going to get it into all these LGSs? How are they going to get people excited? Social media is the king right now. How are you going to get it out in social media? I just don't know how much space there is for all of these things. So MetaZoo is very expensive. So I get why people are like, let's go to the next thing, and try to get on the ground floor and get that ultra exclusive thing. And maybe it'll 5-10x. And who am I to tell you that it won't? I can just tell you how, in a broad sense, the psychology and market dynamics of these types of things and the risks are the things that that make something like that unlikely if there isn't a really good business plan, if the people running that don't have connections, if they're not going to be able to get those cards graded quickly. MetaZoo getting into the grading card companies, all these types of things, selling that NFT at Sotheby's, creating this huge Discord, going to all these collecticons, that is the stuff that launched MetaZoo. And then having like us talk about it and tons of content creators talk about it from small, medium size to large.
Yeah, one thing that kind of scares me with it, and it's not even just related to TCGs, it's the stock market, cryptocurrency, real estate, NFTs. People are just people want to 10x their money in a year, every year. And Rudy's talked about it in some of his recent videos. It's just scary how much greed is out there, how much return people are after. Like I'm someone who's always been heavily into like traditional investments, fully funded 401k and IRAs and all that. And to me, if I'm very like realistic or maybe even like too pessimistic with my long-term projections, if I'm returning 5 to 7% per year, I'm happy. Like that's a good investment to me. And people are just out here chasing moonshots left and right. I mean, literal memes.
And that's why Dan put all of his money into NFT MetaZoo.
Yeah. And I'm on the white list as a Genesis holder to buy the MetaZoo NFT next Friday.
401k, MetaZoo NFT. I think of them as like similar sort of like wealth creation vehicles.
And I'm doing that with like, and I do like that Rudy's mentioned in some recent videos too. Like he has a very strong base in like he used to buy corporate bonds, and he has real estate, and he has some like food businesses of some kind. I think it actually the question's been lost to chat for quite a while now, I think, but somebody asked earlier, like what, like a percentage of net worth in Pokemon and collectibles. And one thing that I've always had a little bit of fear is for myself too, like how net worth heavy so many people in the hobby are into Pokemon. I'm big into finance and like in traditional investing too. And some of those stats that you see, I don't want to make up a percentage, but like a majority of people can't afford an unforeseen $400 expenditure. And I think about that every time I'm doing my shipments, and it's like a $500 card, a $700 card. And sometimes I wonder, like, who are the people buying all these? Because I don't know too many people in my day-to-day life that have this kind of money to be putting into all this. I don't know. I think I probably just went like off topic and on a little bit of a rant, but that's kind of where my head is at.
That seems relevant to me. Yeah, I think it's I mean, something that I think I say a lot is just the hobby's too young. There's isn't enough money here, and the people, and when, to go to your point, when people have large parts of their net worth in a hobby, how much more can they actually buy? Like, whereas if you have a small net worth percentage of your net worth and you have hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, you can buy a lot more cards. So I think when a hobby is dominated by like very wealthy people who are very well established and have a lot of money that they can put into it over time, that's a lot better than having a lot of young people who are super leveraged. And, but I think within the Pokemon card market, there are going to be certain cards and items that fit that mold more than others. So some of your higher end stuff is going to be held by people who are more likely to be able to hold it and afford it overall. Although I think in Pokemon, that's much less the case than in something like sports cards at the moment. And definitely much less the case than something like real estate or although all these things happen. I mean, we saw what happened in the real estate crisis in 2008, where everyone owned 3 homes and was mortgaged up to the teeth and owned nothing. And it was all, and everyone thought they had assets, but really they just had insane debt, and they were losing money because they were so leveraged up that even if the houses would have to keep growing at such an I read this depressing, but also, I mean, it was funny, but awful article about a guy who he owned so much in credit that the houses would have to double in value every year for him to not lose money. I mean, it was like this, like it was like 100% he was going to have to pay every year. So his, and this is the thing you have to understand about leveraging yourself on credit is you have to, your investments have to do better than what you're paying. So if you're paying 3%, 13% a year generally on a fairly low interest credit card, you have to, you have to make more than 13% on whatever that money is invested in. Has to go up over 13% in order for you to net any gain. Otherwise, it would have been just better to just not ever buy that item, even if that item goes up. And then if it goes down, you're getting double hit, which is what happened. And that's why people foreclosed, because they weren't able to hold the items. So you just have to be aware of that even in a market like the Pokemon market. And that's what's happening now, in my opinion, where we're seeing people liquidate all these booster boxes and all these types of things, is I don't think people can afford to hold them, a lot of these items. But it'll consolidate, and the hobby is young and it's got a bright future. It's just going to take time. People to need to make more money than they're making.
Yeah.
See anything else, Dan? How long have we been going for? Roughly? I don't even know when we got started.
It's 11:30. We must have been started by 9:30, right?
9:30. So you want to go to 12?
That's fine with me.
Does that work for you?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll go another 34-ish minutes.
Just a few comments, like Swami mentioned, he's big on the student loan thing. I think those payments start back up within a few months. It's almost like people are getting free money and forgot about their student loans. For sure.
Yeah. It's just, it's stress. A lot of that is like mental health issues, right? It's very stressful, and it's a lot more fun to buy cards. And that's part of why I get so angry at these influencers who are instead of being helpful, they're padding their bottom lines by telling you continue to do things that are bad for you, basically, but are good for them. So, I'm not afraid that the Pokemon hobby isn't going to do well. So what I would like you to do is to stop buying Pokemon cards and pay off your debt, and then come back in a few years when you're more established. We're going to be here. You know what I mean? You could still come and hang out in the chat. I mean, that's what I really like. That's also what's better off for the whole hobby and for all of us, because then you're not going to feel stressed. You're not going to be anxious. You're not going to be yelling negative comments at me or other people. That's also part of the negativity, is because people are anxious and over leveraged and angry and upset. That's also why you see some of the bad behavior. So
Yeah,
the
I've always
hobby
had.
is successful if it's fun, fundamentally. And part of what makes it fun is all of us taking care of ourselves and not burning ourselves out, but by buying too much or by putting ourselves in bad situations. So
Yeah, as we kind of talked about it earlier, but I've always had concern with the investing in boxes that historically have been $100, investing in them at 150, when again historically a set will be in print for like 2 years. Evolutions was closer to what, 4? So yeah, get financially stable, buy with what you can afford to just, if it never goes up, if it goes down to nothing, and then it'll just be a happier, healthier time for everybody, I think.
So Kima says, as a newcomer, where can I learn about the history of the Pokemon TCG? E.g., which sets had long print runs, short print runs, which sets were well received at the time of their release, which weren't. So, I mean, on this channel, I've covered probably everything pretty much at some point or another, but there's tens of thousands of hours of stuff that you would not be able to, I wouldn't be able to point to you. You know, I have some videos that are titled shorter things. And then outside of my channel, there are tons of other channels and people who are sharing that information. There are places like E4, which is a good resource if you want to read, you know, great articles about different things. You can source there. We have a Patreon if it's worth it to you to pay $10 a month, where you can ask us very specific questions and we can give you very specific answers about specific sets, about things that you're interested in. And we also do like deep dive analytics, you know, much deeper than we do here. You know, so those are all options. There are a bunch of free options. I think in the free options, you have to dig a little bit more. You know, in that paid Patreon option, you get the community, plus you can directly ask us things and we can more directly answer. So
Yeah, and there's
like
definitely
synopsis. Yeah.
There's a lot of great information out there, but it's definitely diluted amongst a lot of not great information too.
That's the other issue.
And like, don't take our word for it. If you do pay the $10 and come into our Patreon, trust but verify. Like, question us, come in with questions and we'll answer them, and consult with other people. Look for other, like, don't find and latch on to one creator, even us, and just take everything they say as gospel. Like, you always need to just, like, I listen to a lot of different creators, but we are kind of in like a bubble. There's kind of like, a lot of us started on E4. I see a lot of the same names in our chat here that I see on a lot of the creators that I consume. So just every so often, like, step outside of the bubble, put your thinking cap on, and just kind of like question everything and make sure it all makes sense. And that's with us, and that's with anyone. Because
I mean, I think E4 and E4 guys and girls who came from there are the most knowledgeable people in the hobby overall, like hands down. If you really want history and you want to know about the cards and you want to know the analytics and the information, you know, but that doesn't mean that we're in touch with like how more casual collectors feel. And so to get more in touch with that type of market or what those types of people are thinking, which is the majority of the market, you know, particularly for your, you know, generally $100 and less cards. That's the vast majority of the market is that. I think that there's great value in all those things. But I think when you just want history and information and correct knowledge, E4, some of the guys you want to go listen to people who have been on E4 for like, you know, at least I would say, you know, generally speaking, there are tons of really great people who probably only been on there 6 months or a year. But to start, I would look for people who've been on there for 3-4 years at least, have 1,000 posts ideally. You know, people like, Sherlock, you know, there are a ton of people that we can name, Choke, you know, who make these like amazing articles on stuff. And they're just so passionate and they do it completely for free. And they just like talking about it and sharing and you can get answers to most things there for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, that's where both Dan and I started, I think, you know, and spent a lot of time learning before we kind of have now gone off and done our own thing, in our own Discord and our own community. But E4 was a huge it was an incubator for us in a sense of getting a lot of the knowledge that we have now. What is the oldest item you purchased? So Jake, what is the oldest item you purchased? And Dan, what is the item you've most overpaid for? Two separate questions.
A GIF of a jumping river dino MetaZoo. I paid several $100s for a GIF that you can just download and have your own copy of. That's got to be the most overpaid, right?
Rich. That GIF is going to make you rich. Yeah. Is anything pop in your head of something that you overpaid for?
I've definitely benefited a lot from luck. Just the time that I got in to now, obviously these past 12 months have been different. A lot of things have been going down, but the first 6 years that I was in the hobby, it was just like a smooth, steady line increasing. I mean, I think I've always been a pretty decent buyer and seller, so like doing well on both ends, but admittedly it was easier to do when everything was just steadily, healthily increasing throughout that time period as well. As far as like really bad buys, I'm trying to think.
I didn't think your Gold Star buy, that complete set, was a good buy, and that ended up working out.
It was a calculated risk. I had reason to believe that there might have been minty reverse hollows to come with it. And there just so happened to be.
And there happened to be. To me, that type of thing is like a crazy gamble. Like, because you're literally gambling like $5,000, I would say, on that. Because if that doesn't hit and they're not mint, you just lost $5,000 versus what you could have had. Right? Like if those really are mint, that's $5,000 easy after creating and everything. Once over 3 years, it's going to probably take to sell something like that, unless you sell it as some sort of big lot. But
I did think of a recent one that you'll actually hear about if you follow my YouTube on Wednesday. I lost over $1,000 flipping a card just literally a week ago. What happened was, teaser, I sold a Red Cheeks PSA 10 Pikachu for $5,000, $4,900 maybe, somewhere around there a few months ago. I bought a Yellow Cheeks.
You thought it was red. You thought it was the same one, right?
So like, you ever hop on eBay and you sort by like auctions above $1,000 ending soon? It was like 30 seconds to go or something. I had literally just sold a Red Cheeks Pikachu for $5,000, and I saw one ending for $2,000. Boom, pop the bid in. Don't even think about it. It's funny. I actually screenshotted it right after I won it and paid. I screenshotted it and sent it to Nick, old school Pokemon. Once it went sent, I saw the Yellow Cheeks and I'm like, crap. I'm not that guy. I made the mistake. I had literally already won it and paid. Yeah. I took it on the chin. That was my loss. And then I could have held it too. I could have held it and not just auctioned it off. But I have another one coming. One of the lots I won at Heritage has a PSA 10 Yellow Cheeks Pikachu. So part of the reason I just got rid of one was because short to medium term, I think that card might have room to go down still. And I just didn't want to own two, especially that one copy. Just, yeah, $1,000 mistake.
So oldest item. So I've been buying cards from like the 1890s. Those are some of the oldest cards that I've been buying. So pretty straightforward answer. Let's see. What do you think about Dragon Ball Heroes cards? I don't even know what that is.
I'm 95% Pokemon, and only recently I've delved into MetaZoo. I really don't do hardly anything else.
I mean, if they're like, so Dragon Ball, so I don't know if that's like new vintage. If you give me a time period, I'm a big fan. There's so much DBZ stuff I'm a big fan of. I love like the Japanese Bandai card ass stuff. Like they have the same types of Prism Hollows. You can get them for way less than Pokemon. It's undervalued. Um, so there's a lot of cool stuff in DBZ that's way less discovered than Pokemon. So I don't know if you're referring to anything that, but I don't know that exact term you said. Tommy Focus says, Jake, do you focus on sets and times when the hype is low, similar to back when beginning of Nintendo EX era when nobody wanted Pokemon? These were low print run times. Jake, do you focus on sets? Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the upside of focusing on those types of eras is a lower print run, so they're rarer items. The downside is, do people care about that stuff? Do they form connections with them? Do they want them? So those are the two questions you're asking yourself. Original Nintendo EX era, it's a resounding yes. Pretty much anyone who is in the Pokemon hobby for any extended period of time probably like some of those cards, even if it's just like the dark hollows from like, you know, that everyone seems to love from EX Team Rocket Returns, you know, and some of the reverse hollows, even if, because I have met people who don't really like the gold stars and these types of things, but it's pretty unusual. But generally speaking, those are extremely popular, even though the vast majority of people collecting them didn't even collect them or know about them as a kid. But there may be other eras where that doesn't become the case. One interesting one will be black and white. Black and white seems undervalued from a rarity standpoint, but where's the demand? Is the demand going to be there? That's something that I'd be interested in and betting on some of those cards probably, but it may or may not work out because of those two ideas. Demand is very hard to predict. Rarity, though, is a nice safe place to start looking and start with. But you don't want to get too caught up on rarity because it doesn't matter if no one wants it.
Yeah, I recently had a return come back that had some diamond and pearl, platinum, and it just blew my mind how low, how few graded there are of some of those set hollows. So I've had a little bit of renewed interest in it. I went back and I looked at my binders. I have a few more cards I'm going to add to my PSA submission backlog for when they open. And on that note, actually, Peak That Chew asked if we've heard anything about PSA opening up the regular tier next week. So what I saw on this was, I forget whose post it was, but somebody posted something on Instagram. It was, I think it was one of Nat Turner's posts. And then somebody asked him a question in the comments. And he said regular would be open end of November. He didn't state, I think he said 2 weeks. About a week or so ago. So I don't know if that's like 100% confirmed, being that it's coming from the CEO. I don't think he would have posted that if it wasn't actually happening. I guess the CEO's Instagram page is a relatively official source. So it'll be interesting to see if it comes back open at 75 or 100. I think those are the two most likely and most speculated numbers that I've seen thrown out there.
Let's see. Reek says, are you bullish on modern chases at all? Umbreon, Rayquaza, Gengar, VMAX, Altar, despite high print runs on sets, the low pull rates does seem to balance it slightly when compared to older print runs. Yes, in terms of rarity, I agree. Like those cards, you know, may be similar in terms of the amount of those, you know, only 5, 6, maybe 8,000 more than some of those Gold Star cards in existence ever. But what you have to think about is the attrition rate. So these are the things you want to think about. These are the problems. Attrition. So attrition means a lot of those cards got damaged, lost, destroyed over time. All of these alt arts are generally getting sleeved and kept in really good condition. Now, the alt arts, there have been print issues and some, you know, centering issues and whitening issues and stuff like that. So Yes, there's going to be some degree of maybe condition rarity. Okay, so we have all that stuff. The second thing you want to look at is the historical importance of those cards versus something like this. In 5 to 10 to 20 years, are those alt arts, like how many more alt arts and versions of alt arts and cards that are just as rare or even rarer are going to be in this hobby? We're probably going to get to a point where they might have serialized numbers, and 11 to 15,000 of a card is going to seem like an endless amount of a chase card versus a 1 of 10, 1 of 5, 1 of 100 modern card. Now, that is much, much less likely to hurt the value of gold stars because there's going to be less gold stars, less of them in mint condition, and because of their age and importance to the hobby as the first ever original Nintendo EX era versus alt arts, which I may have a place, they may not. It's sort of yet to be seen. Now, if alt arts were going for $10, $15, $20, $50 in some cases in PSA 10, that would be a much more, I think, good price point to get into something like that, to take a chance on something like that. And I could see good upside. The problem is some of those cards are going for $1,400, $1,000 in PSA 10. It's insanity. Yeah. It's people have lost their minds from an investment standpoint. It's awful decision making. I'm just going to be completely blunt at those prices. But that doesn't mean that those aren't cool looking cards that are going to be valuable over time and that could actually go up in value, just not up from 1,400. Like, those are more like $50-$100 cards that maybe could go up to $300, $400, $500, maybe $1,000, maybe even $2,000 someday if the gold stars are $20,000 to $30,000 each. Like that would be, but instead the gold stars are like $2,000 for some of them in PSA 10 or even $1,500, and the alternative arts are worth the exact same amount, even though there are going to be 100 more PSA 10, 100 times more PSA 10. Like we're probably going to have 5,000 PSA 10s if those prices were really to stay, or maybe 4,000 of those eventually versus 50, 100 gold stars. So that's the type of stuff you want to be thinking about. Condition rarity, and the sort of historical age importance to the hobby, how that's going to age over time. If you look at sports, sports, probably the best one in comic books. It's first appearances, it's firsts within the hobby. Not everything retains value. There's endless amounts of stuff that has zero value, and there's endless amounts of rare stuff in sports. There are endless numbers of 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10 cards that are worth less than $5 because they're of crappy players, because they have endless amounts of 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 things. People don't understand that you really need to nail this lesson inside of you, that rarity does not necessarily matter if it doesn't have good demand and long-term demand, because there's going to be so many things that are rare that it makes nothing rare because they're all competing with each other. And that's what happened in sports, because there are a million 1 out of 10s, 1 out of 100s. Anything to add?
Everyone's special, nobody will be. Yeah, I think the numbered thing was a good point because, like, relevant recent news, Magic the Gathering just went into doing numbered cards. So tying in other TCG news, 50 years from now, there might be 50 different 1 of 1 to 1 of 10 Charizards out there. There might be a shining gold star alt art Charizard that's 1 of 1. And I mean, like what Jake said, the historic nature of what you're talking about, attrition is a huge thing. Roughly speaking, there's the same amount of alpha rares in Magic as there are Kickstarter hollows for MetaZoo. The attrition on the two is not even remotely comparable because MetaZoo cards were born in an era where everything was packed to sleeve to top loader, sent to PSA. Magic, a lot of those things were just tossed at a convention at the end of the play testing. So yeah, just kind of adding on a little bit and tying in the Magic thing. I'd not be surprised at all if within the next 10 years, Pokemon's doing a unnumbered thing.
Yeah, vintage stuff is way too cheap for this stuff to be at where it's at. That's the problem. If and the vintage stuff isn't too cheap given how young the hobby is, if you want my honest opinion. Right. So the vintage stuff is probably pretty correctly priced in my opinion in a lot of places, and a lot of this other stuff is way overvalued and just sort of is what it is.
Pokemon is, though, weird in that the earliest stuff is the most printed out of any. Base set was the most printed set, not all in first edition, mostly unlimited I'm speaking to, but like Magic, MetaZoo, I'm not an expert in like comics and things like that, but a lot of the really earliest stuff in other hobbies and in other collectibles were really low print run, and Pokemon kind of violates that.
Or
At
very,
least,
very high attrition, or both. Like in comic books, it's extremely high attrition because those comic books are from like the 40s, and 30s. Late, I guess 1940 something. I forget exactly when Action Comics #1 was, but in the 1940s, or like 1939 or something, like right around there. Batman like 1936, 7, something like that. Again, not a comic book expert, and I haven't looked at comic books in a while. I did study it pretty in detail at one point, but yes. So, what I would say to that is that it's part of why things like some of the Neo cards, some of the E-Series cards, some of the Gold Star cards, for example, the lower pull rate cards from lower printed sets, and then your trophy cards, your vintage Japanese old back promos, fan club, play promo type stuff. Like that's where you're going to see numbers that are probably comparable to that 11 to 30,000 range, that 10 to 30,000 range. But I mean, one thing we talk about is like there are a lot more Masakis than there are probably those alternative arts, those modern alternative arts. So there's a lot of things that people overestimate, including these awesome old vintage rare cards that I love. So you do have to be really careful and really knowledgeable about where all this should be. But we shall see. It'll be interesting to see where things are in 5 to 10 years, and we'll probably be still doing this. I would imagine. We'll see where life takes us, but we'll be covering it.
Yeah.
Jake, do you collect any Avatar: The Last Airbender cards? Nope, I didn't even know that was a thing. But I like Avatar: The Last Airbender, so maybe I'll go check it out. How about you, Dan?
No, again, Pokemon, and then only recently MetaZoo. Peak Dat Chu asked, Jake and Dan, what do you feel makes you more successful in this hobby, networking or market knowledge?
Definitely market knowledge, 100%. but
networking alone can get you pretty far. Like anywhere else in life, who you know can get you pretty far a lot of times. There's probably examples of that in this hobby.
I knew nobody in this hobby. I built the vast majority of my collection while nobody knew me and I knew no one. And just from studying and being engaged, and I didn't get any special advantages because I knew someone. And I still don't get special advantages, in large part because I don't let my eBay name be known. And there are lots of debates about should you do that, shouldn't you do that, all these types of things. But I don't try to get deals from friends. I almost always buy anonymously. I can't even think of the last time I didn't buy anonymously, actually, where someone knew who I was and they sold to me. So occasionally I sell not anonymously, but so my networking and my connections, what my networking connections have helped is to build this Patreon, is to build this channel, is to build and to have a lot more fun and enjoyment but actually building my stuff, not definitely the knowledge. I could do what I did and continue to do what I did without anyone knowing me, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Market knowledge is a much bigger, like if you could only have one, definitely that one, but a bit of both definitely helps.
Yeah. And I think too, it depends on your business. Like if you're depending on your type of selling and the way you sell and the amount you sell, it can become more important, that networking. And also the volume you're trying to buy. I mean, clearly if you're selling modern distributor product, having the connections, the distributor connections can be the key part to your business. Your knowledge might mean absolutely nothing. Like you could just get 1,000 boxes of the brand new set at $78 each and then flip them for $150. You don't need any market knowledge. All you need is that connection. Yeah. So, right. So there are going to be examples like that. But yeah, obviously I ideally both, but Dan may be a one-trick pony, but is one of the prettiest ponies in the biz, says Mason.
I saw that one earlier.
One-trick Pokemon. It's funny. Jake is an island. He needs no one. Mason says. Mason says, yeah, I'm an idiot and I do okay. Not having knowledge and having distributor product. Hilarious. Ridiculous. All right, what else we got in the last 5 or 10 minutes or whatever?
Tommy Fogel asked, Jake, what is your position on number of set releases per year today compared to the WotC era? I believe it's doubled or more these days. And how does that affect Pokemon in general, in your opinion?
He's saying we think print run is double today as it was back in WotC.
So number of sets per year.
Oh, sorry, number of sets. Yeah, it just goes back to that competition point, right? It's like you can create a lot of rare things, but if you have more different sets of rare things that all compete with each other, it becomes less rare and they all really become the same thing and competing with each other. So it really just doubles the supply in some sense. Not quite, because there are going to be specific chase cards that aren't duplicated from certain sets. You know, like someone may want the Rayquaza alt art, and there may only be one Rayquaza alternative art. And so those other sets may not compete with it. There can be some outliers and examples, but I think overall, most people are not going to pay $1,000 for the alt art Rayquaza if the alt art Blaziken from, you know, like a Battle Styles or something is going for like $5. You know, because there's so much of that printed. There's like that'll probably pull that card down, those types of things. So
one thing that actually surprised me when I did the print run thing for the Patreon back in September, it felt as if we were getting twice as many sets per year. I'm actually looking at it again right now. So 4 per year, generally speaking, is where we've been. It feels like a little bit more because now we get like those holiday throw-ins with celebration. Well, celebrations isn't really a holiday set, but like the mini sets or the holiday sets, celebrations, shining fates, champion's path. So it probably, I guess from 4 to 6, it's like 50% more than it used to be. But it's
WotC was how many sets? So 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, like 16-ish sets off. You know, that's probably not exactly right, but around 16 sets or so. Maybe 16, 17, including Legendary Collection base set 2.
Third Expedition was the 13th one.
I was including those, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Skyridge, I guess, was
I
the
was
15th
right.
one.
So,
yeah.
15? Okay,
yeah.
That was about right. So, and it was 4 years roughly, Wizards of the Coast?
So yeah, just it was May 2003, so it was a little under. I guess it was a little over 4 years. So just under 4 sets per year. We're 22 years in now, and we're on set. Celebrations was like 89 and a half. And I guess that there's been other half sets that haven't really counted towards that number. But like Fusion Strike is set 90. So that's a little over 4 per year.
And but you have a lot of like reprints in WotC, you know, which that doesn't affect it too much, but a little bit, you know, with base set 2 and Legendary. It
definitely feels like a lot though, because there's a lot of different like tins, and especially having distributor access, it's like every month there's something new coming out that I've got to look at my
Yeah.
allocations and I've got to prepare for. And it is a lot.
Yeah, I think I care a lot more about that if I'm Mason than me. I care a lot more about like which set do I put all my money. Like if there's one coming right around the corner, do I skip this set? Do I go a little less heavy on this one because I can get a large allocation in the next one that I think is going to sell better? Like that becomes a lot more relevant. Versus if there's a lot less of those, you have to go heavy into each one. You don't have an option because another set isn't going to come out for 6 months or 4 months or whatever it would be, and I need to like have product to continue to resell. So, but I think as far as like long-term investing or holding, it really has more to do with overall print run than I think number of sets. Although number of sets can definitely, as I said before, they can compete with each other. Although having a lot of different sets, there are going to be certain chase cards. Now I'm repeating myself that might stand out, even though there are a lot of sets. So that's what I'd look at. I also look at sets that stand out, like Hidden Fates, for example, even though there's a ton of it. That's where you could print 15 sets that year, but if none of them are all these shiny vault type sets, I don't think that they compete as much with Hidden Fates. They certainly compete, but not quite as much. Yeah. All right, dude. Should we take a last question or anything? See anything you want to touch on? I'll leave it to you.
There's a few. I mean, I'm good to take another question or two.
All right, we could take a few.
Just one that came in at the bottom from Kai. Thoughts on Topps Chrome Spectra Techno Sparkle 10s as a buy? Not cheap, but surely rare given how they stick. It was just funny because I saw that come in, and slightly above that was a comment from Mason. And recently I heard Mason talking about how he threw away a bunch of Topps Chrome's card years ago. Just kind of a funny thing. I like the top sets. I liked them years ago when I was buying the boxes for $100. That's a large reason why I liked them. At $10,000, I still enjoy the look of the cards and all that, but they are expensive. I mean, I think a lot of the Techno Chromes in PSA 10 go for several hundred, if not like low thousands. And then I don't even know if I want to know, because I pack pulled 2 Techno Charizards myself. I sold 2 or 3. I sold one as a 9 that paid for the 10 boxes I opened in that time frame. And then I want to say PSA 10 Technochrome Charizards are in the multi tens of thousands of dollars right now, which I don't know if that's appropriate or reasonable. That's a lot of money. But so I like the cards, but the prices are kind of scary. Kind of a common theme across the hobby for me with a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a pass for me. But it's not a hard pass, Kai. I mean, if you like them, go for it. Like it's sort of like pick your poison with expensive, rare stuff that other people like. I just don't really like Topps Chrome that much. I'd much rather own WotC Hollow First Edition PSA 10s than I would any of those cards. And I'd much rather own doubles and triples and quadruples of the same WotC cards than I would those Chrome cards, because those Chrome cards just don't mean that much to me. And I just don't care that they're rare. And I prefer the Topson and the Card S, like by a large margin, because they're older and I think that they're much cooler looking. So it's like, if I'm looking for that non TCG type stuff. All that being said, I own some of that. I own at least 5 to 10 high graded PSA 10. I think I have a PSA 10 Venus. I have some other ones that are like pop 2, pop 3 type cards. And I like them. It's just I don't like them as much, and they're expensive, that type of thing. But the thing with those low population things is you can make a killing, because all you need is one, I'm going to say crazy person, but one enthusiastic person. Crazy and enthusiastic is a thin line in this hobby. I'm certainly, you could call me crazy or enthusiastic. You'll probably be right on both accounts for my collection. But but one person who is a set collector and just really wants to finish that set and is willing to pay you extremely high for it. And you could make more money doing that than you could with any, less rare card. That is possible too. You just don't know. Yep.
Anything else you wanted to close out with, or
What I mean, if you said you saw a couple that you liked, or I'm happy to do a few more. We can like answer whatever questions are there and then call it. The truth is I could talk about this forever, but I should go to bed because of like work.
see, this is work for me, so I don't have to go to bed. I mean, I work later tonight and I start work later tomorrow.
You're putting in your hours right now at work.
Yep.
That's part of why it's so great to have you on this Patreon and all of that. We need one person who's full time doing this, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I might be doing it more and more next year. We shall see. I can look too if you didn't have anything lined up.
So Base Blue Boy asked, at what point do you think the base set Charizard artwork reprints will become boring for the majority of people, or never? I really like this one, the metal one. It's pretty cool to have it in hand. Going back years ago, I still do collect like coins and a little bit of precious metals. So this isn't a precious metal, but like just the feel of like the sturdy metal. My dad is like a fabricator welder, so I like it. I don't know. 25 for the 50th anniversary, there'll almost certainly be a base set Charizard reprint, and I think that there will be hype for it. That's my own personal opinion. I could be wrong, but it just seems like the demand for that artwork is insatiable.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I always talk about how you have an Action Comics #1, you have a, Batman #1, first appearance going for millions of dollars. And then you have a 1984 reprint going for $50, $30, $40. And that reprint is already 40 years old almost. Now, when we talk about demand, those comic books obviously have much, much less demand overall than the Charizard card. And the demand seems to be more about getting the legitimate real item rather than like a reprint, a legitimate, we could say, reprint of the item. I do not understand reprints, the value of reprints. I think that it doesn't make sense. As a collector and as someone who's studied a lot of other markets, I don't see the value. I think it doesn't, so I just will never, like, I'm not bored is the wrong word. I still like it. It's just, I like it way less than
value-wise.
Value-wise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and I don't even know if I like it a lot less than the hobby. I don't necessarily, I think people are speculating on these things more than maybe they like it sometimes, or more interested in the money, but that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm seeing like all these people, mass grade these Celebrations Charizards at $150 a pop. To me, that's a $10 card that you're spending $150 to get graded. Obviously, the market completely disagrees. And what is it valuing? I don't know, $400 for a PSA 10, maybe 500. I don't know at this point, maybe a little less. I'm not even sure, maybe more. Either way, I'm so far away that it's like, obviously I'm never going to buy that card. And that's fine. And that's fine. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily boredom. As far as people being bored of it, I'm not sure people bored of it. I think it's rather than saying bored, there's so many cool looking cards that are different and new that I definitely am more attracted to non-reprints, to new stuff that they're doing than I am like keep getting that card over and over again. All that being said, I completely agree with Dan that metal card looks completely different. That's a completely different card to me. I mean, it's obviously it's the same, drawing, but it's feel, its look, it's hollow. Like, I think they're really cool. I think those cards are sweet. Again, way more than I'd ever pay for them right now also, but those I actually would like to own someday. I don't care at all if I ever own a Celebration Charizard. Like it, to me, and maybe I want one or something, just to have it in my Charizard binder with a row of all the Charizards type of thing, which I have and I do enjoy. But and maybe I'll get one in PSA 10 so that I have like a complete PSA 10, getting like PSA 10 first edition base, PSA 10 chalice, PSA 10 base, like having that whole thing one day would be appealing, eventually. But it's just so higher valued by the hobby and by the market right now than I value it. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have anything to add?
No, I'm pretty much with you there on that. The PSA 10 premium has never really been something I could make sense of, most especially in today's state where you can only grade at $150 a card. And if PSA does ramp to 20 million cards a year at $20 a piece or less, a lot more of these can and will be graded. So like paying the premium prices on the graded card today is just scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think people, if you're flipping them, you're just a high risk taker. And right now, if you have them back already and you're actually able to get off them, you're making very good money.
Yeah.
But I don't know how long that's going to last. And so it's sort of like, there's some streamers and some people I watch who have been grading a lot, and, all the power to them that they're willing to sort of take that risk and sell off. But, to each their own, own.
There is one more interesting question that I think it comes up a lot of different times in a lot of different forms, but Peak That Shoe has an option to buy an entire 2005 finalist and below world set. How the hell do you make an offer if the seller doesn't have a number in mind? So it's tough, admittedly. Like people always rush to comps, and I think that's kind of a dangerous thing, especially over the past year. Jake's talked about it a bunch. I think it's been talked about a lot, but on an item where there's literally no comps whatsoever, it literally is. People don't like to hear it. People don't want to hear it, but whatever a buyer and a seller can come to an agreement on is the right answer. So as the buyer, my strategy and my like line of thinking would be, Peak That Shoe mentions, like, I don't want to throw out too low of a number that it offends them and kind of like burns that bridge or whatever. So think of a reasonable number. I mean, there's nothing that like truly has no comps. So look at a similar year, similar placements, find the closest comp you can to set like a baseline, and then think of a number. If X is what you're going to offer, make an offer where like the number isn't so high that if they say yes, you're like regretting paying that much for the cards. I mean, you've always got to make an offer. Don't be that guy who makes an offer, they say yes, oh well, no, I actually want to pay, and then like backpedal. I've had people do that. It's like,
oh yeah,
I'll pay you $5,000 for this card. Okay, offer accepted. Oh well, I really can't. Can you do 4,500 instead? Don't be that guy, because that guy gets blocked and completely forgotten about. But then, like you said, like don't offer.
Dude, you guys haven't seen Tough Dan. Yeah. Dan as a seller, there's a different personality that comes out sometimes.
Like don't. He says there's no finalist comps. I'm not too.
I could give you a price for each of those that I would pay, and then I think is rough. And that year I have a good sense of, versus like 2004 to me is the one that's really hard. 2005, 2006, 2007, I have some sense, of what they're worth. I did a consult with a guy last month where he had questions about these, and I gave him a range of like where I'd like to pay, what I think they'll probably ask, and I just sort of gave them that info. Why I'm able to do that is because I've been buying these for years. And because I have been following them and I've seen the prices go up and down, and I have an also overall sense of how the trophy market is doing and how set cards are doing. And I would want to also get things for slightly lower too for these because the market has trended down. So all of that, I would have numbers in mind, right? But like, how do you get there if you haven't done it? I don't know. Like, I mean, I think it's just about talking to people, about getting information, obviously talking to me, Pikachu, you don't need to have a consult. You can ask me questions privately in the Patreon. It's fine. Obviously David Person, I know you've become friendly with, like, he's a good person to talk to about these, getting that info. The reality is there are very, very few people on the planet who like follow these that in-depthly and are buying and selling these, and it's whatever people are willing to pay. So I know I would, obviously be, just as Dan said, you want to go low but fair, lowish but reasonable. And then you want them to counter, up here, and then you meet in the middle, or you just go the old Warren Buffett and say, this is what I'm willing to pay. It's, take it or leave it, and you don't budget all. I think both of those things are reasonable. I tend to go more of the Warren Buffett approach when it's on very high items. I don't fool around as much. I sort of say, this is what I think is fair. This is what I'm willing to pay, and I'm not going to move and budge. You even know that because if we, on that other Pikachu you were trying to sell, like, I will kind of figure out what I'm willing to pay, and that's what I'm willing to pay. And that's worked well for me in the past. So that's I have a video on this channel about negotiating skills. I think I made 1 million years ago, my first 100 videos or so, and talking about how I negotiate and set those prices. But, to give you a little bit of help, I guess, I would say the 2005 is between probably the 2007 and the 2006 in value, but is slightly closer to the 2007, the 2007 being more valuable. The 2006 probably a little less valuable, but they're all very valuable. and they're all pretty close.
For context, 2005 was one of the years where only the finalists got the cards, right? So like the champion wouldn't have gotten the finalist stamp card.
So only the champion festival ones have the champions. So there is no champion for any of the earlier.
That's right. That's
right.
Yeah. So this is the highest.
Yeah. So he would get the highest one. So what you really have to know is, did each place get 2 that year, or did each place only get 1? Did the top place get all of the ones before it, or just some of the ones before it? Did they get 2 of the place they were at and then 1 of? So in figuring out, and that's the type of question that, I have some knowledge of. David Person is probably one of the most go-to people in the entire hobby to ask that, because he's literally been to every Worlds and bought those cards directly from the winners. And if he can remember, will absolutely have that information, as accurately as any other person. Him and DJ Gigabyte, another person who's at the Worlds. And I think DJ Gigabyte helps him buy those and tracks down some of that. So I'm sure he would know.
At the end of the day, like, no matter how much studying you do, no matter how good of a negotiator you are, negotiation is truly like an art. I've heard a lot of people say, and I think PSA will say, grading is an art. I don't really buy that so much, but negotiation truly is. And you never know the style and the emotions and the nature of who you're negotiating with. So that's always like the wild card. Everyone's different, and even one given person, depending on the day or the week, the month they're having, they might be different. So you might come up with the perfect offer. It might be very fair. It might be based on what Jake says they'd be worth, and what Jake, Dave Person, all these guys say is reasonable, and the guy might not take it. At the end of the day, like, he owns it, and he ultimately sets or agrees to the price. And I mean, there are some cards that I own that I wouldn't sell at market. You'd have to pay me 10 times market to get them away from me. And you never know when you're going to run into that, or vice versa. You might make like a well-researched, reasonable offer. Maybe you paid 5 times what you had to because they weren't as educated as you were. And you just you paid a bunch more than you had to, which is always some amount of a risk, right?
Yep. So, this is the type of thing that it's worth it, to really take some time and do as much digging as you possibly can. This is big money. This is a big purchase. These are very hard to value items. So, all right. So, let's end the stream there for tonight. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone coming up this week. For all of you that are in the United States, Dan and I will be celebrating with our families. We hope you will be as well. And let's see what else for Patreon. We have our Zoom thing coming this weekend, which we're looking forward to. Dan will be presenting, which will be great. And hopefully we'll see a number of you there. Let's see, what else do we got? Anything other notes for us together, Dan?
Just timing on that is Sunday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
8:30 p.m.
I guess I should get to sleep at some point, because tomorrow my main thing is putting that together to present for Sunday. So
I guess the other thing to mention at the last second is I have sold out, but I am starting to use affiliate links after a year and a half on eBay. And when I hear the majority of money that most YouTube content creators are making in this space have been from those affiliate links, I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, so yeah, if you do want to buy something on eBay, and you feel like you've gotten genuine value from this channel, we've helped you make a purchase, or you just appreciate, the free content from the year, it would help me financially and the channel and the stuff that Dan and I want to do and want to build. If when you buy something on eBay, you click the affiliate link, which I'm going to start putting at the bottom of these videos. Yeah. And then we're also planning on maybe doing some stuff for Patreon, with some of that money. So we're, so it costs you nothing type of thing. I never wanted to do it because it felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was like begging for money or getting handouts or whatever. But at this point, it's yeah, if people feel like I've really been helpful and it makes you happy to do that, I will graciously accept that. And I really, really do appreciate it. And, I promise I'll put that to good use in both building my collection and hopefully having this museum one day. And then also, we'll go back into the hobby and the channel and all that sort of stuff. All right.
And just to talk a little bit more like on the mechanics of the affiliate link and why I like them so much, it's like an unintrusive way to support the channel, because it literally costs you nothing. Like, say you click on the link and go to YouTube and buy something for $100, maybe a modern booster box for $100 that you were going to buy anyways. You don't have to buy from me. You don't have to buy from Jake. You're just going and you're buying the lowest listed on eBay. So in a normal instance, roughly 10%. So of that $100, $10 would go to eBay. The way that an affiliate link works, depending on the category, 1 to 4% of that $100, instead of going eBay, just diverts to the creator that owns the affiliate link. So you're literally taking money out of eBay's pocket and putting in the creator that you're supporting's pocket. No cost to you. It just takes a little bit off the top from eBay for the creator diverting the traffic. So I think it's a great way to support anyone. I mean, yeah. Jake and
to be fair, Dan and I both use our friends and our creators' affiliate links all the time when we buy things, for that very reason, particularly, and Dan and I have talked about this, particularly when that content creator really helped us or brought our attention to a specific item. I do try to make a point in doing that. So thank you all so much for hanging out. We really appreciate your time and attention. We love doing this. Dan and I would be doing this privately without an audience, and it wouldn't be as fun. It would still be fun, but it wouldn't be as fun because we wouldn't be getting a lot of engagement and questions. It would be us probably more going in circles.
Yeah, it's nice to have the chat to kind of steer and then get answers to the questions that they have. So I appreciate you having me on for this chat, and
absolutely, man.
Appreciate everyone in chat joining us, because it was a lot of fun, as Jake said.
Awesome. All right. Everyone have a great night. And we I will try to have a video for you all probably early next week. Not sure if I'm going to have one before then because of a lot of family stuff this week. But and then Dan has a channel, YouTube channel. Go support him. And a podcast, and we're trying to do this and make content for you guys. And yeah, we appreciate any and all support as always. All right, so we'll end it there.
Yep.
Good night, guys.
Good night and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.